Romanian Eagle. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 576, Peace Talk, Part 2. When proposals for Soviet peace talks reached Bucharest, Edel was also grieving over the war. Although the results of this war were good, 4 divisions of the Soviet army were annihilated, and 4 divisions were severely damaged. The other battles added up to the loss of the Soviet army to 112,000. However, the Romanian soldiers were not invulnerable, and the losses were not small. According to the statistics of the military, more than 47,000 officers and soldiers were killed, missing or injured. The pensions of these people alone are a lot of money, and together with the loss of weapons and equipment, as well as the consumption of military supplies, the total cost of this battle is about $50 million. It can be said that the sound of a cannon is 1,000 taels of gold, and the ancients did not deceive me. And this battle made Edel also know that the danger of hitting the edge ball is easy to overdo it if you are not careful. The conflict with the Soviet Union was a sign of his own failure. He originally planned to have a Zangufeng incident, but ended up playing a local war. Fortunately, both sides had scruples to control the scale, otherwise a full-scale war is likely to break out. But the final result was good. If the war was lost, it would be the loss of the wife and the loss of the army. And this also reminded Edel, don't take drastic actions thinking that you know the trend of history, or you might shoot yourself in the foot. And it was here that Prime Minister Karachary hurried over with Foreign Minister Kostel. Your Majesty, this is a proposal for peace talks from the Soviet Union. Prime Minister Karachary handed the Soviet diplomacy. The happy expressions on the faces of both of them were, after all, both high-level government officials, no better than those civilians. I still know very well the gap between the two countries, and I also know that the smaller the scale of this battle is, the better it will be for Romania. And before that, what the government was most afraid of was that the Soviet Union would launch a larger scale war because of its defeat in the battlefield. Although this possibility is very small, it is also a possibility. And let Romania practice against the Soviet Union alone. Not only the government has no confidence, even Edel and the military have no confidence in this. The main reason is that the population gap is too large. Even if a few Soviet soldiers kill a Romanian soldier, Edel cannot afford to lose. So when Edel saw the news about the proposal for peace talks, he was relieved. What advice do you have on peace talks? Edel looked at the two and asked. Facing Edel's question, Kostel, the foreign minister, answered immediately. According to the wishes of the government, it is naturally willing to negotiate with the Soviet Union. However, we need to choose a place as the place for the peace talks, and we also need to negotiate with the Soviet Union in terms of time. That's Warsaw. As for the location of the peace talks, of course, the country concerned cannot be chosen, so it can only be negotiated in other countries. And Edel took into account the current relationship with various countries, and set up this location in Poland, which has the best relationship at present. It can also be regarded as helping Poland to improve its international status, and it can be regarded as a benefit given casually. As for the specific time, it can be discussed with the Soviet Union. I believe they, like us, are willing to end the war as soon as possible. After Edel finished talking about the time and place, he continued. And in terms of conditions, Mount Helmech must be as for the Helmech mountain, which caused the conflict between the two sides. It must be under the control of Romania. This is also Edel's explanation to the Romanian people. Otherwise, while let the domestic media publicize the meaning of this battle, what can you do to improve the self-confidence of the domestic people? You can't just talk about it, you need to show evidence. The fact that Mount Helmech is under Romanian control is the best proof. And other issues regarding the return of weapons from the exchange of prisoners, we can also discuss with the Soviet side. Edel still doesn't understand the communist country. Don't even think about reparations. It's hard to say that unless you can knock it down, it's impossible. As for the Brest contract, signed by Lenin at the time, it was under the weight of the question of survival. And after seeing the opportunity, didn't Soviet Russia tore up the contract? As for Stalin's quest for peace in World War II, it was nothing but a tactic to delay troops. If Hitler really agreed, he would get 2 years of peace at most. When the strength of the Soviet Union recovered, he would continue to fight. This is also the reason why Hitler refused Stalin's request for peace. He had already seen that Stalin was just asking for a breather after Edel explained the basic conditions of the peace talks. They both breathed a sigh of relief. They also didn't know that their king knew the Soviet Union very well, and they were most afraid of the king's radical ideas. This will make the peace talks more difficult, and the possibility of a collapse of the talks cannot be ruled out. And now the conditions given by Edel make the success rate of the peace talks very high. So the two left contentedly. After receiving Edel's reply. When the prime minister and others left, he saw his son Victor's face was blue and purple, and he ran to him in a military uniform with a look of grievance. Now Victor sent him to the military academy to study, and he was not allowed to reveal his identity as a prince. Have a fight with someone. Seeing the tragic image of his son, Edel asked. They beat me. Victor said aggrievedly that he was beaten. According to Victor, he got into an argument over a trivial matter and then got into a fight. Of course, Edel wouldn't listen to his son's words completely and saw that he recruited a guard to let him know the situation. It wasn't until the guard informed him of what he had learned that Edel knew that this matter was not as small as his son said. Victor, who concealed his identity in the military academy, was disliked by other classmates because of his mischievous nature. Then he was beaten up by someone for arguing with others. Do you know why you were beaten by others? Looking at his son, who was still aggrieved, Edel asked. Because they don't like me. A person doesn't like you. Maybe it's his reason, but a group of people don't like you. It's their reason. Victor, who was educated by Edel, was speechless. I saw Edel continued to speak. If it's your own fault, then you need to make a change. Find out why you're unpopular. Edel regretted not being able to discipline his son after he sent away Victor, who didn't know much. Now that Victor still has a shapeable form, he needs to be trained in the military academy. If the personality is fixed after adulthood, it will be troublesome. Peace talks between Romania and the Soviet Union are progressing rapidly, with both sides intent on ending a war that has become meaningless. So when the Soviet representative Molotov and the Romanian representative Kostel signed in Warsaw, it represented the end of the Russo-Sioux War. As a result, the territories of the two countries remained unchanged except for the return of Mount Helmec to Romania. In addition, the two countries will return the weapons of the prisoners to each other, and the living expenses of the prisoners also need to be paid by themselves. The main reason was that the Soviet army had more prisoners, and more than 10,000 prisoners needed expenses, and naturally the Soviet Union had to pay the bill. Overall, it was a mutually satisfactory contract. Romania turned its attention abroad, and its national self-esteem was boosted after the victory. The Soviet Union saw its gap in this war and believed that the next step would be to catch up. Chapter 577 HOFFMAN-039 S New Equipment Imagined. After the signing of the peace treaty between the ROSU and the Soviet Union, Romanian troops were withdrawn from the Soviet Union one after another. The Armored Division, which made great achievements in this battle, took the lead in withdrawing to the country as the first group of troops, and Lieutenant General Hoffman naturally needed to retreat with his own troops. The current battle with the Soviet Union is a thorough experiment with the concept of rapid combat of the armored forces that I lead. Although the concept of folding and rushing was first demonstrated in actual combat, the cooperation is not particularly tacit, and there are even problems of communication and understanding. But the result was as successful as I thought. Next, we need to further deepen the concept of armored combat with the cooperation of land and air. Hoffman sat in the command car and wrote the summary of the battle eloquently. The combat experience this time is very valuable to him, because this is the first time that the armored division is the core of the combat idea. Although it is not perfect, at least the results of the battle can make his idea recognized by several bigwigs. The summary of the battle this time is naturally a reflection of the results for the high-level officials and His Majesty the King, who silently supports him, so Hoffman wrote it very carefully. The actual combat results show that the use of armored troops as an assault force can indeed break through the enemy's defense line quickly, without giving the enemy time to react, which is much better than the previous gathering of heavy troops. The first is the concealment. The concealment of heavy troops is very poor. It is easy for the enemy to find out the direction of their main attack and respond. In this regard, the mechanized troops are much better, and it is also conducive to their concealment point. The second is the rapid maneuvering after the breakthrough. In previous operations, even if the heavy troops broke through the enemy's defense line, the movement speed was not satisfactory, because whether it was infantry or cavalry, the maneuverability was not comparable to the mechanized speed of tanks. Moreover, the gap is even more obvious when encountering enemy intercepting troops. Tanks are more capable of continuously breaking through enemy interceptions, even bypassing areas heavily defended by the enemy, pointing directly to the opponent's strategic locations, transportation hubs, and even cutting off the enemy road effect. For infantry and cavalry, it is too difficult to do the above, and there are too many uncertain factors. So in terms of the development concept of future wars, further increasing the investment in armored forces can make the Romanian army stronger. Moreover, for the Soviet Union, my country's main opponent at present, its vast plain terrain is also very conducive to the play of armored forces. Hoffman couldn't help but take out a cigarette when he wrote this, took a deep breath, and continued to write. Based on the concept of future armored force operations, I need to make a few points here. The first is the need for aviation to shield the battlefield, and armored forces are very dependent on air support. First of all, it is necessary to seize air supremacy, which is also the premise for the armored forces, to be able to conduct rapid maneuver operations. Therefore, it is necessary for our country to further develop new fighters to ensure that we have the aviation power to suppress our opponents. Secondly, air power needs to have a means of delaying the opponent's marching speed. At present, my country's airstrike means are relatively simple, and its ground attack capability is limited. There is also a lack of fighter jets dedicated to precision strikes against enemy forces. It is hoped that the speed of research and development of this kind of aircraft can be increased, especially the precision bomber is the most reliant means of armored forces. Because previous battles have shown that the armored forces have limited ability to attack fortifications, and this aircraft is required to increase their ability to attack fortifications. Hoffman raised the issue of the plane first, also because of his regret that he had not been able to capture Kirovograd in the first place in this war. If there were Romanian ground attack fighters that could delay the opponent's marching speed, it would be very likely that the Panzer Division would arrive at Kirovograd first, and the subsequent fortified Battle of Kirovograd could be completely avoided. Also has a great effect. You must know that most of the Romanian casualties in this war were produced in the Battle of Kirovograd. After writing the requirements for aircraft in future wars, Hoffman finally started his main battle weapon tank point. Although the Jackal 4th tanks currently used by our army can still be used for a period of time, we also need to conduct pre-research on the next generation tanks in consideration of the precautionary measures. According to the usage conditions obtained on the battlefield, the cross-country speed of the next generation tanks is it must not be less than 36 kilometers, and the number of kilometers driven by one-time refueling should not be less than 350 kilometers, because with the military development of various countries, their military vehicles will also increase. And it is unlikely that the supply point and transportation line are only more than 10 kilometers away from the front line like in World War I. This also requires the tank's long-range maneuverability to be sufficiently improved. In addition, according to our information, countries are currently developing new anti-tank guns as a means to deal with armored forces. Therefore, the frontal thickness of the new tank must also reach 60 to 80 mm in order to improve the survivability of the tank. Moreover, according to the use of tanks by our army on the battlefield, although the 47 mm of the Jackal 4th tank can deal with all the current tanks, considering the future development, it is also necessary to develop the new 75 mm tank gun. Because many times the task of the tank is to help the infantry to remove the enemy's stronghold. The 47mm tank gun it is equipped with is sometimes inadequate, and considering the cost issue and the future of road bridges and field bridges, the total weight of the new medium tank should not be higher than 32 tons. And in order to facilitate the concealment of the battlefield, the height of the tank should not be higher than 2.7 meters. And based on the current tanks, have requirements for battlefield communications, and it is best to install radios on new tanks To facilitate combat command point in the previous battle, Hoffman had a deep impression of sign language and semaphore. Many times on the fierce battlefield, in order to facilitate the command of the tank needs someone to wave the semaphore, which makes it a living target on the battlefield. Many excellent tank soldiers died like this, and if there is no one to command, the tank coordination ability is too poor, and it is not conducive to combat, which makes Hoffman very distressed, so take this opportunity to propose to install a radio to realize in-vehicle communication. It not only reduces the risk of its own soldiers, but also improves the coordinated combat capability of the tank, which is not very good point according to Hoffman's requirements. We can sort it out. The requirements for the new medium tank are to have a speed of 36 km per hour, its maximum driving distance to be 350 km, and the thickness of the frontal armor of the tank to be 60 to 80 mm. It is a 75mm caliber tank gun. The maximum weight should not be higher than 32 tons. The height should not be higher than 2.7 meters. And there is a communication radio point after Hoffman wrote his requirements for the new tank. Based on the consideration of battlefield operations, he also put forward requirements for the development of 2 new tanks. These 2 tanks deal with reconnaissance and attack capabilities. I saw Hoffman continue to write. For the current reconnaissance of wheeled armored vehicles in the army, there are several shortcomings. First, it is the ability to adapt to the battlefield. The currently equipped wheeled reconnaissance vehicles have very poor adaptability to Soviet roads, and their poor road conditions make them, and the performance of this war is very poor. Therefore, a light tank is needed as a weapon for reconnaissance and anti-reconnaissance point. It is required to have good off-road ability, fast off-road speed, 55 km per hour, lightweight, not more than 16 tons, general firepower, 37mm gun is good. Good communication ability, must have a radio station, necessary protection, 30mm frontal armor, and for the attacking tank, Hoffman also made a request. The frontal thickness is 100mm, and the speed should be above 25 km per hour. Powerful main gun, 88mm or 105mm gun, weighing no more than 48 tons. Chapter 578 Summary of the War. In addition to his demands for new tanks, Hoffman also demanded suppression fire self-propelled guns and anti-aircraft guns, because of the need to provide air defense cover and fire support for the troops at any time. It is first required to keep up with the marching time of the armored division. Based on the 36 kilometers that will be equipped with new medium tanks in the future. In addition to caring about his own armored division, Hoffman also had some ideas for troops that could keep up with the armored division. In this war, the requirements for marching speed are much higher than in the past. In future wars, there will inevitably be troops that need to follow the armored divisions for maneuvering operations. They need to have good maneuverability and certain armor. Troops that can quickly resolve skirmishes. Armored vehicle mobility is the mainstay, with trucks, armored vehicles, and motorcycles as the mainstay. We can call it a motorized unit. In the previous battle, the 15th Division was the embodiment of the most elementary. It can be used as a fast-moving and offensive armored division to clear the area obtained by the enemy, which is conducive to expanding the victory and protecting the armored division's backpath. Hoffman is worthy of being the first person in Romanian armored operations at present. In this war, the impact on the future military has achieved quite a lot of prospects. In a sense, he is currently the most proficient in armored combat in the world point, and at the time of Hoffman's summary of the battle, Guderian, the inventor of the Blitz, was doing the same point. Romania's use of tanks in this war has convinced me of the role that tanks will play in future wars. I have been fighting with General Hoffman these days, and in his hands, tanks have become the absolute determinant of this war. King. Whether in offensive or defensive warfare, this weapon makes the enemy feel like a formidable enemy point. Of course, the current tank is still not perfect, but the basic combat characteristics have been fully demonstrated in this war. For my country, which cannot develop tanks at present, the most important thing is to gain enough research and development experience. In this regard, it can be jointly developed in cooperation with Romania. Because at present, Romania is the best in the use of tanks, and at the same time, I have the best distribution of armor, mobility, and firepower for the 3 major element of tanks. This idea is also reflected in the hands of General Hoffmann. And when I was talking with the general, his use of tanks was no worse than mine. For this reason, our country needs to step up the research and development and use of tanks. Germany cannot fall behind Romania in this advanced combat concept. Guderian eloquently wrote in his diary, which is also his concern about the fact that Germany still does not have an armored force. Although it is said that Germany and Romania are currently cooperating with each other in the military, and many new technologies are shared by both parties, Germany is a big country in Central Europe after all, and many times it needs to rely on itself. And as these military technologies are absorbed by Romania, it is not clear when Germany and Romania will have a dispute over a certain issue in the future. And what should Germany do at that time? Guderian now casts envious glances at the Romanian army, and because Germany was defeated, it was required to keep only 100,000 troops. Although His Excellency Admiral Sieckert did his best to retain the German elite, nothing could be done by the 100,000 troops. So the occupation of the Rhine happened, and the German army was helpless about it. Can only watch the Fabian army ravage Germany's heavy industrial base. This made every German soldier feel humiliated, and of course Guderian was no exception. When Guderian thought of his motherland, because of this war, Admiral Mandive, who was still organizing the retreat of the army, also made a summary. However, unlike Hoffmann and Guderian, he summed up more strategically. Although our country won this war, the growth of the Soviets deserves our vigilance. The performance of the Soviet troops in several battles is worrying. From the beginning, these Soviet troops showed amazing tenacity, and in that he has a strong learning ability during the battle. From the beginning, he was beaten and collapsed by us, and then he gradually interacted with us. Especially in the later Battle of Kirovograd, this performance was most obvious. Sometimes I even think, if the fighting in Kirovograd continues for a few more days, our interception force will probably not be able to stop the attack of the Soviets. From the perspective of the Soviet Union's territory, population and rapid industrialization, if there is no huge change in the future, then our country will definitely take a strategic defensive. For our country, we need to start considering the construction of some defensive fortifications in the border areas. Of course, Admiral Mandive would not have written this summary so pessimistically, only to see him continue to write. Of course, this is only a possibility in the future. In this battle, our army's use of armored forces has also allowed our country to determine a new idea for military reform. However, this idea requires strong national support, among which steel, oil, and vehicle manufacturing and other needs are particularly prominent. Although my country has made little achievements in this regard, the Soviet Union has already surpassed my country with its rich resources. I have some assumptions about wars that may break out in the future. First of all, our Navy has an advantage over the Soviet Union at present point. Although Admiral Mandive was born in the army, he still knew something about the Navy, and knew that the Navy was currently busy promoting the construction of a new class of battleships. How could he not know such a big thing? So Admiral Mandive will count the Navy among them in the future. First of all, we need to annihilate the sea power of the Soviet Union, so that it no longer has the sea power that threatens us. Secondly, relying on the protection of the Navy, we can make surprise attacks on the enemy's various positions in the Black Sea. To the east is the Caucasus region, and its Baku oil field is the blood of its industry. Along the Don River, you can also reach Stalingrad, the current transportation hub in the south. And it is not far from the Donets coal mine, which is also the main heavy industry area of the Soviet Union. It can be said that, as long as the Romanian Navy dominates the Black Sea, it will let the troops of no less than 400,000 people not be firmly contained around the Black Sea, which will greatly change the strategic posture of our army. Admiral Mandive spoke of the army after the Navy. At present, the tasks of the army also need to be placed on strategic defense. In line with the attitude of paralyzing the Soviet Union, our country should withdraw part of the troops along the border, because the current long-term confrontation is not conducive to our economic development. As a response means, defense roads, permanent fortifications, semi-permanent fortifications, field airfields and other facilities also need to be built, so that the Soviet Union does not put all its attention on us. In Admiral Mandive's view, the war was not wrong. However, the Soviet Union could not be allowed to focus on Romania. Other surrounding countries have benefited from this war. Why should Romania be a target for the Soviet Union? Chapter 579 Mercia in service. While the army was busy wrapping up the war with the Soviet Union, a grand ceremony was taking place at the naval base in Varna, Romania Point in the military port. A giant sea beast is quietly squatting in the military port. The flags of the kingdom and the navy are draped over it, and the sailors on the warship hold their heads high and are proud to serve on this dreadnought warship point. And on the pier, the band was playing the navy anthem, and Admiral Lumberton, Minister of the Navy, boarded the warship with a group of high-ranking naval officers at the invitation of Captain Midrafil. Admiral Lumberton delivered a speech to thousands of officers and soldiers on the ship point after 5 years of construction, outfitting and sea trials. The Mercia has finally entered service. The commissioning of this battleship also marks Romania's ability to build its own battleships and gives us the strength to compete with other navies. This is a small step in the development of the Romanian Navy, but it is a big step in Romanian shipbuilding. During the construction of the Mercia, our shipbuilding capacity also went from only 10,000 tons of warships to tens of thousands of tons of battleships, and this is not the culmination of our navy. It is just a new beginning, the first step in moving the Romanian Navy from a regional navy to the world. The small Black Sea cannot trap our Romanian Navy. In the near future, our Romanian warships will sail freely in the Mediterranean Sea, and we will certainly be seen in the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean. Admiral Lumberton's words caused the naval officers and soldiers present to applaud. Only with the growth of the Navy can more Navy officers and soldiers see hope. Every officer and soldier who joins the Navy does not want to be shown in the world's oceans like Britain and France. At present, the Romanian Navy can only rotate in the Black Sea. Navy officers and soldiers dream of breaking through the restrictions of the Black Sea Strait and appearing in the Mediterranean Sea and even the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. However, this is not realistic for Romania at present, and the strength does not allow the Navy to do so. That's why they were happy that Admiral Lumberton had spoken his heart, because it meant that the top Navy thought the same point after retreating. Admiral Lumberton asked Colonel Midrafil, the first captain by his side, how about the sea trial of this warship, and how are the officers and soldiers operating? Captain Midrafil, who is the captain, would like to ask if you already knew, but considering the public situation, and it is very rude to ask your superiors like this, I have to say it again. The current sea trial is in good condition. As for the operations of the officers and soldiers, they can be carried out in full swing, but these officers and soldiers keep in mind the equipment that they need to manage. I believe that, after practicing a few times, they will initially have combat effectiveness. Colonel Midrafil's answer made Lumberton stop, only to see him looking at Captain Midrafil with a calm expression. Do you feel like I'm rushing you? In the face of Lumberton, Midrafil didn't know how to speak, because he really felt the urgency of His Excellency the Minister. There were still some small projects in the sea trial that had not been completed, so he was immediately ordered to serve. Now asking himself these things made Midrafil have some bad associations. Is it necessary to use the Navy to fight against any country? And there are only a few countries around that allow Romania to use the Navy. When Lumberton saw Midrafil with a wonderful expression, how could he not know that the captain was thinking about it? Just had to say the answer. Our proposal for the construction of a new battleship was rejected by His Majesty. It was rejected again. No wonder Midrafil would say this, because the Navy had submitted plans to build battleships several times before, but they had all been rejected. It's not that they are not allowed to build, but that the new battleships designed cannot satisfy His Majesty. Because of this, the Navy's chief ship designer, Dieterams, was about to ditch what little hair he had left. Yes, it was rejected again this time. Lumberton looked at the energetic officers and soldiers in front of him and said to Midrafil beside him, now you know why I'm so eager to make the Merca form a combat force. Please rest assured, Minister, I will speed up the progress and let the warships form combat effectiveness as soon as possible. It's just that the consumption of ammunition and living materials are needed. Hearing Midrafil's assurance, Lumberton patted him on the shoulder and said, the Navy has fully cooperated with you in this regard. The ammunition and living materials for training are sufficient. You only need to let the officers and soldiers form combat effectiveness as soon as possible, and then you can regain the face of the Navy. There is no way, although Admiral Lumberton has the sole power in the Navy, but he also needs to shoulder the huge responsibility. The construction plan was rejected several times in a row, which greatly lost the confidence of the Navy. This time, putting the Mercer into service is not a move to improve the confidence of the Navy. And Lumberton had probably figured out some of His Majesty's requirements after several consecutive proposals were rejected. It seems that the plan of continuing to use 380 guns as the main gun cannot be used all the time. Next time, I will try a 406 caliber battleship plan, and the speed needs to be further improved. However, in this case, the cost of shipbuilding will need to rise steadily, and it is doubtful whether it will pass by then. Lumberton kept what he thought to the bottom of his heart. Today is a big day for the Navy, and this kind of thing cannot disturb everyone's happy mood. As the King of Romania, Edel did not serve on the Mercia this time, which made many people puzzled. In fact, there is nothing to doubt, mainly because Edel doesn't want to go. It's that simple point. Since he knew that he was going to serve on the Mercia, Admiral Lumberton was bound to sell his plans for the battleship. For the current Edel, the new battleship has not yet made up his mind. That's right. The real situation that makes Lumberton puzzled is that Edel himself has not made up his mind. Because Edel does not know how to choose the next level Romanian new battleship, whether to continue to build an enhanced version of 380 caliber, or expand the caliber to build a new 406 caliber battleship. In terms of combat effectiveness, it is natural that the new 406 caliber battleship is more outstanding. And its combat effectiveness is also much higher than that of the 380. However, in doing so, the construction cost must be much higher, which made Edel hesitate. There is no way for the current annual financial situation of the Romanian government. Although it looks good, because of the issuance of a lot of banknotes, the financial situation is still tight. Starting construction of battleships is a big deal, and for Romania, building up to 2 to 3 battleships in the future is the limit, because the Navy needs to build other ships, and Edel also wants Romania to build an aircraft carrier, which will squeeze more shipbuilding costs. So at present, before he has made up his mind, Minister Lumberton's plan may not be passed. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 580 Kutu, Part 1. The Russo-Sioux War in Europe had little impact on Europe, and the US economic crisis across the ocean was still ravaging the country. A large number of factory closures have driven unemployment to new highs, and many penniless people can only live in cardboard shacks. They called the cardboard shack Hoover House, the begging sacks Hoover bags, and the animal-drawn carts Hoover carts, a mockery of what Hoover said when he boarded the president. So that every American family has a house and a car, and every pot has chicken, and their daily task is to go to the employment agency to find a job, and remember the meal times of the various relief offices in the city, and then try to find out if they can get a lunch or dinner. According to statistics, the number of unemployed people in the United States has been maintained at around 13 million for a long time. These unemployed people cannot find jobs in cities for a long time, which leads to instability of social security, and many desperate people have to engage in illegal businesses, which makes American gangsters were all the rage at the time. Many people couldn't stand the drastic changes in American society, and many people left the United States. According to statistics, during the Great Depression, the United States experienced a net export of population. While ordinary people were starving. The irony was that so much of America's agricultural and sideline products were burned because they couldn't be sold, and the Mississippi River was called the Milky Way at the time. Because unsold milk was dumped into the river in large quantities, it changed color. Since the people are so miserable, the factory is naturally not much better. The people do not have the purchasing power to keep products in warehouses, which has caused many factories and enterprises to fail to operate. In 1931, 31,578 factories and enterprises filed for bankruptcy, reaching an all-time high point, and at a time when American companies are going bankrupt, every business and factory is struggling to survive. Orders are everything to them now. He doesn't care where you come from, whether the money is legal or not, as long as it's banknotes. He can get everything he wants from the United States. As long as they are willing to give money, those factories and enterprises will dare to sell whatever they have. So this is also Victor very satisfied with the current work. Now those capitalists surround themselves every day, trying to sell their factories to themselves. Exaggerate it like a flower, just to buy a passable price point. That's right. Victor was the head of Soviet procurement in the United States, specializing in purchasing equipment and technology that the Soviets needed. I remember when he first set foot in the United States, before the Great Depression broke out, many Americans were full of hostility to the Soviet Union, and many stubborn entrepreneurs put on ugly faces, publicly claiming that they did not plan to not give the Soviet Union any equipment and technology. This made Victor indignant, and his sense of the United States was extremely bad. After the outbreak of the capitalist economic crisis, those who openly said that they would not sell anything to the Soviet Union ran to themselves in tears, begging themselves to buy their things, as long as there was something they could sell. It's a Shakespeare tragicomedy, and Victor's heart is a lot more enjoyable to watch. It also deepened his understanding of capitalism a lot. Comrade Lenin, the great revolutionary mentor, was right. Capitalists can sell their own ropes for profit. After that, Victor's work in the United States was much better, and many equipment and technologies urgently needed in the Soviet Union were bought by Victor in the bankrupt factory. In the past, these equipment and technologies cost a lot of money, but now only a small amount of capital is required to let their owners or escrow banks surrender. Victor also received domestic awards for his work in the United States. However, for Victor, the domestic recognition can only be regarded as the icing on the cake. As long as he can continue to be responsible for procurement in the United States, he is satisfied. It's not that he has any bad ideas about the purchase cost. Victor is not stupid. The purchase cost is clearly marked, and there are many people monitoring each other. How could he make mistakes on such a principled issue? But he likes to see the tragic scene of capitalism, which makes him extremely comfortable, like eating honey. In order to ensure that he will stay in the United States in the future, and seeing the American people in dire straits, Victor still needs to work hard. Levski, return the information of the Toke tractor factory, and tell their boss, Mr. Toke, that we are very dissatisfied with his offer. If he does not lower the price, we will stop talking to him about the acquisition. Secretary Levski hurried in and took the materials. Okay, I'll do it right now. But when Levski came to the door, he couldn't help asking, as far as I know, the Torque tractor factory is the one with the lowest price in this batch. Why should I send its information back? The secretary's words caused Victor to raise his eyebrows. You want to know why? If it is inconvenient to tell me, then I will send the information immediately. Although he didn't know why his boss said this, Levski knew that he shouldn't be too curious at this time. It doesn't matter. It's not something that you can't know. Since you want to know, I'll tell you, Victor said with a frosty face. Because the information shows that the Torque tractor factory is a new factory that has been opened for 5 years, and its equipment is also brand new. But what I learned is that the Torque tractor factory was indeed opened 5 years ago. Factory, but the equipment is used to purchase second-hand equipment. The money to use these second-hand equipment to sell new equipment is for the money that Mr. Toke can think of. After hearing what his boss said, Levski couldn't help but curse this damned profiteer, and in his heart, Levski once again scolded the profiteer. No wonder the profiteer introduced his niece to him, and he still had this idea in mind. Fortunately, my boss was shrewd and didn't let me fall into it. After watching the secretary go, Victor couldn't help laughing. In fact, where did you find out about this? As long as the quotation of this Mr. Toke is slightly leaked, other people will inevitably inform themselves of its bad side. Over and over again, you can know these factories like the back of your hand. Then, in the infighting of a group of capitalists, it is enough to choose the most suitable one from the Soviet Union, To buy point, this is also a little trick of Victor, which facilitates his choice point, and just when Victor was complacent about it, a staff member broke in point. Comrade Victor, a group of our acquisition targets in Detroit were bought ahead of schedule. Chapter 581 Cut 2, Part 2. It was acquired in advance, so let's change another batch. There are so many bankrupt companies in the United States, isn't it enough for us to choose? Victor, who didn't understand, replied casually. Point Victor has encountered many things about his chosen target being taken first by others. Many of them are fairly high quality companies, and naturally there will be people who take the opportunity to snatch their favorite factories. There are not so many factories that are bankrupt now. It is good to look for a replacement if someone robs them. What a fuss there is, that's right. That's Victor's attitude. That's why he was surprised by the staff's attitude. Point seeing that Victor hadn't paid attention to this, the staff member said loudly, Comrade Victor, it's not that 1 or 2 factories were bought in advance, but many factories we chose were bought. Point hearing the staff member's words, Victor finally paid attention. Point how is this going? It was only under the staff member's account that Victor understood the seriousness of the problem. Many precision machinery factories across the United States have been acquired. In addition, in industries such as aviation, steel, petrochemical, shipbuilding, and vehicle manufacturing, many of the goals chosen by themselves have been taken first. Moreover, these enterprises are basically factories with their own skills or some kind of new technology, and they belong to enterprises with high added value. Point so, when he heard his subordinates introduce the new situation, Victor realized the seriousness of the matter. Go and find out who is buying these companies first. Point when the Soviets were horrified by being cut off for their chosen target, their men were in contact with Boeing in Seattle. And they were received by the famous William Edward Boeing. Yes, Boeing is the company named after him. Point and unlike the king of later generations of passenger planes, Boeing now mainly designs military aircraft. Although the current military aircraft market has become very narrow because of the peaceful era, Boeing alone still launches many military aircraft, of which Boeing 83 is currently the most military aircraft in the US military. The arrival of the Great Depression made life difficult for Boeing. Fortunately, they launched the first Boeing 200 monoplane postal aircraft, which made Boeing's situation much better. Let it not go bankrupt like James Smith McDonald, the founder of Dow Glass, but it's not much better. Therefore, Boeing is also very willing to cooperate with other countries. Hello, Mr. Philks. Boeing, the company's president, greeted the leader's hand after the cooperation representative from Romania arrived. Point hello Mr. Boeing. Point as one of the main persons in charge of this procurement, Philks naturally greeted Mr. Boeing very enthusiastically. Point your country's purchase in the United States this time has brought many companies back to life and saved many people from going bankrupt. It also hit the arrogance of the Soviet Union, just like what your country did to the Red Empire in the border areas. All are defending free capitalism. Look at whoever said that those who are engaged in technology can't speak, and Mr. Boeing can speak very well. Raised Romanian purchases in the US to the point of defending capitalism. Point in the face of Boeing's praise, Philks replied casually, thank you for your interest in us. In fact, this time we want to introduce technology from Boeing, and we have seen your company's research and development of monoplanes. Our country also hopes to reach cooperation with Boeing to jointly develop new aircraft, so that more monoplanes can soar in the sky. Point that's right, this time Philks came here to purchase Boeing's technology in monoplanes. Boeing management began to study monoplanes as early as 1928, and despite the fairly good results of their own Boeing 83 series, they believed that the era of biplanes was coming to an end. So they focused most of their efforts on monoplanes research. Point the Romanian aviation industry is also conducting research on monoplanes under the care of Edel. The purchase of Boeing's monoplane technology this time is also to integrate the technologies of the two countries and allow the Romanian aviation industry to achieve greater development. Point in the face of Philks' blunt words, Mr. Boeing did not refuse. Thank you for your interest in Boeing. In fact, as the engine horsepower increases in the future, the speed of the aircraft will inevitably become faster and faster. Only the monoplane can exert its full performance. This time your country is here. By the way, Boeing has the best monoplane technology in America. Before the Great Depression, Boeing might have been a little hesitant to sell technology, but now, of course, it is eager to sell these technologies. After all, research and development requires funds, and the huge Boeing company also needs expenses. Naturally, it can sell some or some. Moreover, Boeing basically has no market in Europe, and selling technology is pure profit, and there is no reason not to sell at point. So the two parties negotiated about the technology of the monoplane. Basically, one wants to sell, and the other wants to buy, so there is a price issue between the two. On this point, there is little difference between the two parties. Boeing has no idea of selling high prices, and Romania has no idea of picking cheap. So in the end, Romania sold Boeing's current monoplane in the mature market at a price of $1.2 million. Mature technologies are packed away. When the two parties were enjoying themselves, Boeing thought of the airliner project developed within the company at this time, so he couldn't help but say it again. I don't know if your country has any ideas on passenger aircraft, but we are developing a new passenger aircraft. This is a real passenger aircraft with an all-metal structure and streamlined appearance, and adopts our newly developed lower monoplane structure. It will be a masterpiece across the ages. Boeing's words made folks interested. I don't know about this passenger plane. There is no real object at present. Yes, it's just at our test flight field, but it's just a prototype. As for its real launch, it should be more than a year away. Boeing said it blushed a little at the end, because the new airliner had only ever built a prototype last month, and had only ever conducted a test flight. But folks ignored Boeing's expression. He asked with great interest, "Then can we go take a look?" Everyone came all the way to Boeing's test flight field outside of Seattle, and a shiny metallic plane appeared in front of them. Just listen to Boeing's serious introduction. This new airliner, length 51 feet 5, 15.7 meters, wingspan 74 feet 1, 22.6 meters, height 12 feet 5, 3.8 meters, and an empty weight of 4,055 kilograms. The maximum takeoff weight is 6,190 kilograms. According to our design, it can carry 10 passengers and fly 750 kilometers. The introduction of Boeing made folks think of the Ju 52/1 meter, which has just gained fame in Germany. This aircraft can also carry 2 meals, but it can fly 1,500 kilometers. However, the disadvantage is that this is a cargo aircraft, and it is also a 3-ship aircraft. Compared with the 2-engine Boeing airliner, it is indeed incomparable in terms of comfort. However, considering that Romania is currently developing slowly on passenger aircraft, it is good to introduce some technologies. Thinking of folks here, I couldn't help but say, this airline looks unique, so if the price is not high, we can also buy some technology. And folks' words surprised Boeing, and it's always good to sell before the development is complete. Immediately at the test flight site, the two parties discussed the purchase of technology before the future aircraft was named Boeing 247. In the end, Romania offered $800,000 to buy the drawings of the aircraft. And, in order to keep the technology of this airliner, Romania is not allowed to sell this airliner to foreign countries. Filks agrees with this, as it was only purchased to enhance Romania's aviation industry. There are bound to be aircraft that have been launched in Romania in the future. Chapter 582, Cutu, Part 2. It's Romanians who are snapping up our chosen factories and equipment. After a few days of understanding, Victor finally knew who was behind it. But this result made Victor feel a little difficult. Because this is in the United States, those greedy capitalists only have money in their eyes, and whoever gives the most money will naturally sell it to whomever. Although the Soviet Union purchased more in the United States than in Romania, many purchases were made from cheap factories, and there must be only a few bankrupt factories with technical capabilities. So after being cut off by Romania, Victor found that in aviation, steel, petrochemical, shipbuilding, and vehicle manufacturing industries, there are only 2 or 3 kittens left in this kind of factory. It made Victor a little blind. After all, this kind of cheap factory was bought, and there was no more. And those factories that are not bankrupt, unless they pay a high price, and the price of purchasing new equipment is not cheap. Historically, a considerable share of the Soviet Union's purchases in the United States were those factories that went bankrupt. They dismantled these equipment back to the country, which effectively guaranteed the industrialization of the Soviet Union. However, as Romania is also spending money in the United States, the better factories are snapped up to Romania, leaving the Soviet Union only those equipment that even Romania does not look down on. Of course, in industries without Romanian competition, Soviet procurement continued. However, at present, the Soviet Union has high demand for industries such as aviation, steel, petrochemical, shipbuilding, and vehicle manufacturing. This lack of procurement will inevitably affect the industrialization of the Soviet Union. Therefore, Victor has no good way to do this, and can only report the problem to the country. In fact, it is not only in the United States that this kind of performance occurs. In the United Kingdom and Germany, there are also Romanians who are robbing the Soviet Union for equipment. It's just that it is much smaller than the size of the United States. Who makes the United States the hardest hit area? So soon the news that Romania was snapping up Soviet equipment came back to Moscow. You mean Romania is in the world, snapping up equipment with us? Stalin, who heard the news, raised his brows and said, waving his corncob pipe, can I understand that without our knowledge, Romania was unexpectedly robbing us of old factories and equipment? Stalin's words made Kubyshev feel his back wet, but he still answered. It can be understood in this way that the total Harmony book, Harmony, remembers comrades. In the case of Romania and our snatch, the impact on the first 5-year plan to be completed will be less, but the second 5-year plan to be started will have a greater impact. Among them in industries such as aviation, steel, petrochemicals, shipbuilding, and vehicle manufacturing, it is enough to have an impact on the goals we set. After hearing Kubyshev's words, Stalin asked quietly, how big is the impact? If we still need to achieve the established goals, then we need to pay 400 to 500 million US dollars more. This requires our country to export more food and raw materials, but at present, Kubyshev's words fell silent as Stalin waved his hand. I saw the leader who controlled the Soviet Union said slowly, the extra spending of 400 to 500 million dollars is nothing for the great Soviet Union. The communist, anti-harmonious, pro-parties will not back down in the face of difficulties. The second 5-year plan must be completed with high quality and quantity, which is the building of a great Soviet, the inevitable choice. We want the Romanians to know that their little tricks are of no use to the Soviet Union. With Stalin's final word, the tasks of local governments at all levels under pressure have been increased a lot, especially in Ukraine, which is rich in products. It got the heaviest share of Stalin's gifts, while the Soviet people were complaining about more export missions. In Romania, Edel was also checking the acquisition results. At present, Romania's procurement can be said to be quite smooth, and the sudden attack caught the Soviet Union by surprise. Many factory equipment was purchased back to Romania at half price, and Edel is negotiating with Prime Minister Karachi on the processing of these purchased equipment. These returned equipment, your government needs to be more careful. This has greatly promoted the development of Romania, and your government cannot relax. Faced with Edel's instructions, Prime Minister Karachi naturally did not dare to neglect, only to see him reply, Your Majesty, please rest assured. Regarding these equipment, the government has already made a comprehensive arrangement. Among them, the major state-owned enterprises will pick up what they need and use them to expand production. We will deal with the rest to businessmen in our country at a low price. However, Your Majesty, after the domestic production capacity is expanded, there needs to be enough market. At this point, the market we currently have is close to saturation, and if we want to digest its production capacity, we can only expand domestic demand and open up new markets. I don't know about this, Your Majesty. What are you thinking about? As for the way out of Romanian goods, this is Prime Minister Karachi's greatest worry. At present, Romania's external markets are only the Balkans and Poland. As for Italy, Turkey, and Western Europe, Romania's products currently have a low domestic market share. Because high tariffs have raised the price of Romanian goods, and Romanian goods have always been sold at low prices, it's not that they don't want to sell high prices, but their quality is different from that of British, French and German products. Taking the industrial cutter heads currently sold in Romania as an example, the best German products can be used for 1 month under the same conditions, while Romania can only be used for half a month. This also leads to the current price of Romanian industrial cutter heads, which can only reach 40% of similar products in Germany. Because the price is high, others might as well buy German products as a result of low-priced sales. Romanian companies are far less profitable than other countries. This also leads to the fact that the wages of Romanian workers must be much lower than those of countries such as Britain and France. Although the wages of Romanian workers are already quite good in the Balkans, this is where Karaca's worries about continuing to expand production capacity come from. At present, Romania's traditional commodity sales countries are saturated. What should I do if the production capacity cannot be sold after the expansion? Prime Minister, don't worry. The Prime Minister's worries, Edel, naturally knew. But he wasn't too worried about it. Because now is the time to receive a wave of results. That's right. Edel has already selected a target to deal with the effect of the expansion of production capacity. The friend in the Far East can help me with my work. Cheap and good Romanian goods are better than those in Japan next door. And who wouldn't dump it at a low price? This is a stunt of later generations of rabbits. To download the latest TXT ebook of this book, please click mobile phone reading of this book review. For the convenience of reading next time, you can click the favorites below to record the reading record of this time, chapter 604 Cut Part 2. And you can see it when you open the bookshelf next time. Please recommend this book to your friends, questions, blog, WeChat, etc. Thank you for your support! Chapter 583 The Experimental Aircraft Carrier Borcescu. The disputes between Romania and the Soviet Union abroad did not affect domestic construction in the slightest. As the Romanian Navy, it still builds its own warships in an orderly manner today. A strange-looking flat-topped ship is sailing on the Black Sea, and there are several destroyers escorting it around it. Anyone who knows about warships will know that this flat-topped ship is a new aircraft carrier. Speaking of the invention of the aircraft carrier without flying, this kind of machine that can fly freely in the sky has become an indispensable part of the military with its fast mobility since its birth. Naturally, the Navy will not turn a blind eye to it, so Navy personnel have always studied it. On November 14, 1910, the American pilot Eugene Alley took off from the 253-meter long, 73-meter wide wooden platform installed on the front of the cruiser Birmingham in a Curtiss biplane. On January 18, 1911, Alley piloted the aircraft and successfully landed on the platform installed at the rear of the parked armored cruiser Pennsylvania, using the tail hook of the aircraft to hook the brake cable. These two brave practices confirmed the possibility of taking off and landing aircraft on the ship, marking the birth of the prototype of the aircraft carrier on May 2, 1912. Captain Gregory of the British Navy successfully took off and landed aircraft on the battleship. These successful practices led to the birth of the British Naval Air Force, and a new branch of arms began to appear in the naval sequence. These are just new equipment. That means that the aircraft can board the warship and become its reconnaissance and correction of the artillery school. In the First World War, the combat capability of submarines was increasingly revealed. In order to give full play to the unique reconnaissance and anti-submarine capabilities of the aircraft, the British Navy first started the modification and development of the aircraft carrier. They first converted a coal carrier into an aircraft carrier and named it Ark Royal Point. Although on the surface, the Ark Royal can be called the world's earliest aircraft carrier, but strictly speaking, it is actually a seaplane carrier. Because land planes took off and landed on the ship at that time, the danger was high. Therefore, the Ark Royal was equipped with seaplanes that could take off and land on the water. The lifting rods on the mothership lifted the aircraft to the surface and then take off. The plane is recovered to the deck after the plane touches down on the water. It is precisely because seaplanes do not take off and land directly on the ship that the decks on the original aircraft carriers were small. The takeoff and landing method of carrier-based seaplanes is not only troublesome and time-consuming, but also inevitably damages the aircraft. So while using the above methods, people began to explore allowing aircraft to take off and land directly from warships. At that time, the aircraft were basically all biplanes, which were light in weight and had a short takeoff and landing distance, which made it possible for the aircraft to take off and land directly on the deck of warships in 1918. At the end of the First World War, the British Navy dismantled the main turrets on the front and rear decks of a large cruiser Rage and covered with a wooden flight runway, bounded by the superstructure in the middle of the deck. The first runway is used for takeoffs, and the stern runway is used for landing. Rage thus became the earliest aircraft carrier converted from warships with aircraft takeoff and landing functions in September 1918. The British Navy converted a passenger ship under construction into an aircraft carrier HMS Hundred-Eyed Giant with an all-pass flight deck. During the refit, all the original chimneys of the Hundred-Eyed Giant were removed and converted into a horizontal exhaust duct leading from below the main deck to the end of the bowl. Because the entire flight deck is very flat and empty, and almost no superstructure can be seen, this new model of aircraft carrier is also known as a plane-type aircraft carrier. At this time, aircraft carriers were basically refitted from other warships, and it was not until the birth of Fengxiang that the first real aircraft carrier was born. In December 1922, the Imperial Japanese Navy's first aircraft carrier Hosho was born. It was not refitted, but was built according to the design of the aircraft carrier from the beginning, so it is considered to be the first real aircraft carrier in the world. With the advent of Fengxiang, many aircraft carriers such as the British Sports God and the American Lexington began to appear, and today there are many aircraft carriers in the world. And Romania, as a country in the Black Sea, the road to aircraft carriers has only just begun. As a soul of later generations, Edel certainly knows the power of the aircraft carrier, but it is a pity that Romania's position puts the aircraft carrier in an embarrassing situation. Edel Mussolini said that the Italian bureau is the largest aircraft carrier. This sentence is that he does not have a clear understanding of the future. Then Edel said that the Black Sea can't hold an aircraft carrier. Then it is the real situation. In this Black Sea, which is 1,150 kilometers long from east to west and 611 kilometers wide from north to south, the role of aircraft carriers is minimized. The enemy's shore-based aircraft was within 2 steps of going out, and the consumption of the carrier-based aircraft and the shore-based aircraft was definitely a performance of the mind. That's why the Romanian Navy is so obsessed with traditional warships such as battleships and cruisers. And Edel can't do the thing that the cow doesn't drink water and press the head, so Romania's aircraft carrier road has been delayed until now. As for the Ploiesti, it was also driven by Edel, and the Navy was good at mails in recent years, so it was rebuilt using a fast freighter with all the superstructures removed and replaced by thick solid wood panels. The unobstructed Ploiesti is completely a plane-sized aircraft carrier. Although the Ploiesti is a plane's aircraft carrier, the modification of the interior space can carry 24 combat aircraft. Among them, 12 He-Ho fighters were transformed from Goshawk fighters, mainly for strengthening the landing gear and installing tailhooks. There are also 12 Ripon carrier-based torpedo planes, which have not been developed in Romania before, so they were purchased from the United Kingdom. This Ripon carrier-based torpedo aircraft, Captain 1120 meters, wingspan 1367 meters, height 391 meters, empty weight 1978, maximum takeoff weight 3350, can carry an aviation torpedo. Its flight performance is the maximum level flight speed 179, the range 660, the practical ceiling 3050. It is responsible to say that this aircraft is a product that is going to lag behind the times, but who told Romania to have not studied the torpedo machine before, so I can only use it to make up the number this time. There were several pen carrier based torpedo planes parked at the end of the deck of the Ploiesti, which seemed to be for a test flight. The wind is up, and you can take off. With the commander waving the yellow hand flag vigorously, the test pilot quickly started the aircraft. The plane jumped off the deck. After accelerating. Success. The naval officers and soldiers on the deck immediately cheered for this. Subsequently, several planes were also released from the deck, which made the people of the scene cheer for it. Although they have seen planes take off many times, there are still not many fighters flying on the deck, which is worth their joy, because it takes off on the deck, the requirements for the pilot are much higher. It is not an experienced pilot who has not been trained and cannot do this at all. And even veterans have made mistakes, so every successful flight is a test for the newly established naval carrier aviation. No way. After all, the aircraft carrier is no better than the land, and its deck length cannot be compared with the land. Therefore, at present, the naval carrier-based aviation of various countries in the world is one of the best among them. The captain, Major Fernandez, was also watching the flight. Fernandez is a rare aviation faction in the Navy, but it is different from the naval aviation faction of other countries. Fernandez argued that the Navy needed a large number of aircraft to ensure reconnaissance and artillery training to ensure that the Romanian Navy was in control of the enemy's movements at all times. Of course, for him to make such a claim, the Black Sea is still too restrictive for aircraft carriers. However, although he was not optimistic about the aircraft carrier in the Black Sea, when he took over the post of the deputy captain, he still devoted himself to it. During the day, he manages the training of officers, soldiers, and pilots, and at night, he studies information on the use of aircraft carriers by other countries. In just half a year, Fernandez's understanding of aircraft carriers reached the highest level in the Navy, as if he was the only one who was the captain of the aircraft carrier, and this test flight is just the beginning of the aircraft carrier training, and a lot of training is waiting for them. Fernandez, on the other hand, needs to watch his officers and soldiers display the results of their training, but they still have enough time to train. It is believed that in the future Romanian carrier aviation will not be the only one. Chapter 584 Far East Economic and Trade Cooperation. Peace in the Far East has finally arrived. Edel looked at a newly arrived telegram and couldn't help sighing. He has an unforgettable grief for the hardships this nation has suffered radically, and no matter what, he can only grieve in his heart and cannot do anything. Does condemnation work for Japan? It's useless. The 9-nation pact of the League of Nations can only let the interested countries see the inability of Britain and France, which dominate the League of Nations, to do so. At present, Edel, as the King of Romania, made a mistake in his calculations. Before he was responsible for 36 million of his own nationals. The author said that I would explain in detail, so he could not make any actual actions. So Edel can only watch the fall of the 3 northeastern provinces, and can only watch Shanghai fall into war. Can he do anything about it? He can't do anything. Harmony is everywhere, and Mantou is afraid. Just ask everyone to see it, don't promote it. But although he can't do anything about it, he still needs to pay attention here. In addition to the memory of the past life, and the huge market in the region, is very attractive to Romania. It's true that Edel didn't plan to make a fortune in the country, but he was friends with the country's leaders. For this reason, the leader from Zhejiang also sent him a telegram of thanks, thanking Romania for his support. For the support of this leader, Edel cannot be said to be heartless. Not only sent him military advisors, but also sent him much needed arms during the Central Plains War. These borrowed arms helped the leader to become the victor after the war, and now is the time for what Edel wants in return, which is why he is still expanding production. The Far East is where Edel is looking for new products to dump. To this end, Prime Minister Karachari specially summoned Zhu Jiahua, the new ambassador of the Republic of China to Romania, to state Romania's ideas to him. Zhu Jiahua's appointment as Romanian ambassador is also the result of Edel's butterfly flapping its wings. At this time and space, Romania's support to the Far East was higher than that of Germany, and it also sent military advisors to help its reorganized forces strengthen its strength. Because Lieutenant General Modelk was promoted with outstanding achievements, he was able to work as a personal advisor, so he was appreciated by the principal, and then the Romanian Military Advisory Group was officially established. Romania then sent hundreds of officers to participate in the modernization of its military. Because the military policies of the two countries are almost the same, it is also called the Rhodes Joint Advisory Group. And Romania also relied on a lot of military support, which made many Chinese people feel good about Romania at that time. Zhu Jiahua is one of them, and this time he was appointed as the Romanian ambassador. It was also the great contribution made by Mr. Zhu for equipping the 19th Army that made Edel's friend a little unhappy. And just as the relationship between Romania and it has become very close, the appointment of a pro-Romanian figure as an ambassador can also reflect the importance attached to EDA ambassador ZHU. Romania has close relations with your country, and the exchanges between the two countries are also increasing. So this time, I invite your excellency ambassador to come. The main reason is to deepen the economic and trade cooperation between the two countries. Carachari said straight to the point of Romania's request. Point in the face of Carachari's speech, Ambassador ZHU knew that he was not in control of this matter. This time the Romanian government just needed to convey it on his behalf. He himself has a very good impression of Romania, mainly because Romania has grown rapidly from a small Balkan country to a member of the great powers in just 2 decades. More importantly, Romania has a friendly attitude towards the Republic of China, but it doesn't say anything about the attitude of the party state. Point. Although he notes that these will definitely require returns, but compared with other countries, the two countries with the best attitude towards China are Rhodes, because they have the most respect for the Nanjing government, and it is the respect that moved ZHU Jaya. This attitude is the most valued among those who are trying to find a way out for this continent. There have been too many humiliating days, and a country with far superior strength still treats itself equally. This respect is the most worthy of preservation. Point. So in the face of Prime Minister Carachari's words, Ambassador ZHU said, our country is also willing to see the economic and trade cooperation between the two countries. No one does not know your country's true feelings towards us. The work-study program funded by His Majesty Edel of your country is still continuously supporting our country's students who want to study in Europe. And these people will inevitably become the promoters of our country's modernization. For this reason, our country also intends to strengthen the economic and trade cooperation between the two countries. These words are the voice of Ambassador ZHU. In his opinion, whoever buys is not buying. As long as the quality and price difference is not big, then why not buy from countries with friendly relations? The voice of Ambassador ZHU not only represents himself, but also represents that many people in the country are now focusing on Romania, trying to learn from it the road to becoming a strong country. Then Carachari came up with Romania's custom-made trade cooperation for the Far East. Primarily a scheme to exchange products specific to the Far East for Romanian goods. In order to expand the sales of other civilian products, Romania also hinted that the price of products will be further reduced. It's basically taking advantage of Romania's dumping of low-priced products to grab the Japanese equivalents that are currently in the country. Although Romania does not necessarily win in quality in Europe, in the Far East, Romania can be said to be cheap and high quality compared to similar products in Japan. Although the products from countries such as Britain, France, and Germany are inferior, but who makes Romania cheaper? And in order to cooperate with the export to the Far East, the government also intends to rebate the products exported to the Far East. These methods are all learned to later generations. Edel is just learning and using them now. Even if the government makes less money, it will open up this market. After Romania passed the news back to Nanjing through Ambassador ZHU, many people were very interested in strengthening economic and trade cooperation with Romania, especially as Edel's old friend. Because he also knows that Romania has helped him a lot, and Romania's strength is also strong, and just taught the Soviet Union a lesson on the border. In addition, Romania's cheap and high quality products are also praised by their own troops. Although German products have always had a good reputation in this territory, Romanian products are also good. Moreover, it is also very beneficial for the government to have an additional import channel. Although the German representative has been secretly saying that German products are better, the cost performance is more important. Now that government funds are limited, it is only important to sell more products for the same amount of money. Therefore, in the end, the Luova Economic and Trade Cooperation Agreement was signed very quickly with the intention of both parties. With the signing of economic and trade cooperation, Romania's goods are continuously shipped to the Far East, which will lead to the decline of Japanese products, which occupy a large share of the country. Although Japan has retained a lot of shares by virtue of its political influence, its share in the country there was no recovery until the outbreak of the war. In addition to Japan, the share of Britain and France has also decreased a lot, which has caused London and Paris to have a lot of complaints against Romania. As for Germany, the share is relatively small, mainly concentrated on arms and machines, and the impact is not so great for the time being. However, with the reorganization of the country, sooner or later Germany will find out that Romania is unknowingly robbing itself share. Chapter 585 Roosevelt came to power. When Edel put aside his worries about the Romanian economy, a telegram from as far away as the United States turned his attention to the American continent. The telegram only stated that former New York Governor Franklin Roosevelt had won the election and was about to become the 32nd President of the United States. After more than 3 years of the Great Depression, the American people have experienced pain, fear and despair. They couldn't bear it any longer for President Hoover when the Democratic candidate, Franklin D. Roosevelt, appeared in front of the crowd. One is Hoover, who let him down, and the other is Roosevelt, who did a good job in New York, and the result is clearly in front of everyone. Seeing this telegram, Edel felt heavy pressure on it. The two-legged president is a politically gifted president who will change America's current policy of isolation and focus Americans abroad. As for Roosevelt's New Deal, which is talked about with great interest, in Edel's view, it is just a postponement of economic problems, which is of course much better than a free economy regulated by the market itself. However, it still does not completely solve the problem, but delays more problems. It can be seen from the economic growth of the United States that it was not until 1940 that the American economy fully recovered to the level before the Great Depression, and at this time the European continent was already in full swing. It can be said responsibly that the American economy was saved by World War II. Although Edel knew this, there was nothing he could do to change it. As for the assassination of Roosevelt, he did not consider it at all. You must know that the Roosevelt family is an American political family. From the fact that Roosevelt followed his father to meet the then President Grover Cleveland when he was 5 years old, America's status, and without Roosevelt, there is also Sifu. The US economy has reached this stage, and domestic capitalists and politicians will also lead the United States to join the war. And when a strange president appears, it makes Edel even more difficult to figure out. Although this is known as the greatest president of the United States in the 20th century, as long as everyone has weaknesses, only God can avoid it. Since the United States chose Roosevelt as historically, Edel at least does not have to worry about the deviation of history. This is definitely good news for him. However, before that, Romania needs to start preparing for the issue of combat readiness 7 years before the outbreak of World War II. Does Edel need to be in such a hurry? The answer is yes. Now Romania must prepare for the start of World War II, and new equipment for sea, land and air needs to be developed. Moreover, the development time of these weapons has also been extended with the indicators of new equipment. Let's just say that the 3 tanks requested by General Hoffman are still in the drawing stage, and not even one of the actual tanks has been completed, because if you want to build this tank, you must develop a new diesel engine, new main guns and other equipment. These need to be solved by technicians one by one. At present, there is a troublesome thing for him, that is, Lieutenant Admiral Lumberton, the Minister of the Navy, is visiting again. I saw that Admiral Lumberton came to Edel with a new document. Your Majesty, this is a newly developed battleship by the Navy. We will temporarily name it the H-type battleship. This is the drawing and performance of the battleship. Please take a look at it, Your Majesty. Edel took the drawing and opened it, and saw the whole picture of the H-type battleship. After it was completed, the words of the new type H-type battleship were also marked on the top of the drawing. This battleship is different from the previous Merca. First of all, the 406 caliber main gun selected by the Navy this time is larger than the Merca. And the modification uses the same long forecastle as the Mitchell. However, unlike the Mitchell, the H-type battleship is more compact, and the 2 flues behind the long forecastle are merged into one, which is more in line with Edel's impression of later battleships. The fort still uses the layout of the first 2 and the last one, and is equipped with a triple-mounted 406 caliber 50x naval gun developed by the Navy for it. In order to let Edel see the power of this naval gun clearly, Lumberton also specially gave its data. This 406 caliber 50x naval gun, 3 types of shells have been set up, namely armor-piercing shells, grenades, and anti-personnel shells. Among them, the armor-piercing projectile weighs 1085 kilograms, has a built-in asterisk of 18 kilograms, and has a muzzle velocity of 772 meters per second. The range, 30 degrees elevation angle, is 338 kilometers. The maximum range is 43 kilometers. The rate of fire is 2 minutes, and the pitch range is -2 degrees to +45 degrees. Armor penetration versus vertical homogeneous steel armor, 785 millimeters. At muzzle, 543 millimeters at 10,000 meters. 452 mm at 18,000 meters, and 381 mm at 25,000 meters. The propellant pack is 6 silk pharmaceutical packs, usually with a charge of 341 kilograms, and the life of the inner barrel of the artillery is 260 rounds. Since the pre-researched artillery data of the H-type battleship is so high, its protection will also be amazing. The main armor belt reaches 400 mm, maximum. The deck is 220 mm, 3 layers. The front of the main turret is 410 mm. The top is 240 mm. The gun base is 380 to 320 mm. The conning tower is 400 to 260 mm. With a total armor weight of 16,466 tons, it is currently the most armored warship known. The power to drive this sea monster is also composed of 8 high-pressure heavy oil boilers and 4 steam turbines, with a stable maximum output horsepower of 160,000 horsepower and a limit output horsepower of 1.73 million horsepower. In addition, other weapons of the H-type battleship are also quite good. 12 double-mounted 105 mm 45 caliber high-level dual-purpose guns, 24 double-mounted 40 mm anti-aircraft guns, and 18 20 mm quadruple-mounted anti-aircraft guns. Its anti-air firepower can be described as contempt for the world. For this reason, the standard displacement of the H-type reaches 41,870 tons, the full load displacement reaches 48,510 tons, and the maximum speed is 305 knots. The last H-type reached 246 meters in length and 357 meters in width, making it an uncompromising super battleship. Seeing the data of this battleship, Edel couldn't help but ask, have you ever thought about the cost of this battleship? Hearing Edel's question, Admiral Lomatin, who had been waiting, said quickly, we have already calculated that the cost of a bun should be around 2.2 billion lei. This cost surprised Edel for a moment. This is the most expensive battleship at present. The Nagato in Japan is only 43 million yen, and the cost of the hood is only 6.02 million pounds. Although this is the cost of the late World War I, it is too much higher in conversion. Seeing Edel's expression, Lieutenant General Lomatin was nervous and hurriedly explained. Because many technologies need to be newly developed, such as radar, new seaplanes, as well as power, artillery, etc., which cost money. In fact, Admiral Lomatin didn't say a word. This cost was discounted. The actual cost calculated by the Navy was 2.4 billion lei. Lomatin didn't dare to report the cost, so he concealed part of its cost. After the construction of the battleship is almost complete, I will inform Edel of the actual situation. At that time, the government will not be able to wait for the warships to be half built. Edel, who didn't know that he was trapped, felt that the cost was a little bit, but thinking of the approaching war in the future, he gritted his teeth and said, this plan will allow Romania to maintain its dominant position in the Black Sea. You can build it according to this plan. After sending off the happy Lomatin, Edel has to worry about convincing the government. Chapter 586. Sure enough, the government was very unfair to the cost of this shipbuilding, but under the strong pressure of Edel, it could only be passed. As for the attention of other countries attracted by shipbuilding, Romania can only claim that the standard displacement of the two battleships temporarily named H-type is 350,000 tons, fooling other countries. Anyway, this is not the first time to lie. What does it matter to lie once more? When other countries find out that something is wrong, who will have the energy to manage Romania? Although they passed the border temporarily, Britain, France and other countries strongly demanded Romania to join the Washington Naval Treaty. Before there was only one battleship, they could turn a blind eye. Now it is obvious that Romania is going to build ships, so they hope to use the Washington Treaty to Romania. Tethered point. In fact, Edel has no objection to joining the Washington Naval Treaty, because this treaty will expire in a few years. But if you want Romania to join, you have to tear up a layer of lip service. If you want Romania to join, you can join. How can there be such a good thing? Point. And in this battle, the time came to 1933. And Romania's economy developed rapidly in this year. Among them, Romania and the Republic of China signed economic and trade cooperation, which allowed domestic production of goods to find a vent. In other European countries, the economic crisis is still ongoing. Therefore, the Soviet Union and Romania have become the few countries in Europe that still maintain economic growth. Such dazzling achievements have led many economists in Europe to conduct in-depth research on Romania's approach to the economic crisis. Among them, Keynes, the father of macroeconomics, praised Romania's response in the newspapers. In his opinion, Romania has responded appropriately to the economic crisis that has affected the whole world, and its government's strong intervention in the economy is the key to its ability to avoid recession. Point. And he believes that, although Romania's additional currency is suspected of artificially reducing national income, it is more important to the economy. This will at least keep factories operating, allowing workers to continue to earn income, and it will minimize the external impact of Romania's economic activity. Moreover, it is also a very smart decision for Romania to invest these additional currencies in domestic infrastructure construction. This can not only stimulate economic growth, but also improve the transportation time of domestic commodities and reduce consumption in the circulation link. It is a model worth learning from other countries. However, although these private economists are advocating Romania's response for other countries, if you want to make changes, many officials will first object to it, because doing so has only seen results so far and has not seen the consequences. If this changes, then too much needs to be done, at least to get officials to change from traditional liberal economic thinking. However, Britain and France have little interest in changing their policies because of their vast colonies as buffers, while other countries have their own various reasons. This model cannot be used for Romania. Therefore, by the end of 1932, the total national economic value of Romania reached a record high of 741.7 billion lei, calculated according to the depreciation of Romania's depreciation by 20 and the depreciation of the US dollar by 50. It should be 231.3 billion US dollars, a record high. Poland and Italy were left behind. Currently ranked ahead of Romania are the United States, Britain, Germany, France, the Soviet Union, and Japan. Romania is currently only ranked 7th in the world. As long as Romania's economic development does not fall behind, it will only be a matter of a few years to surpass Japan. Because the equipment purchased from other countries is currently being shipped back to China, and after a year, there will be another wave of Romanian equipment. In the steel industry that best reflects the strength of a country, Romania also ranks 7th in the world with an annual output of 3.78 million tons of steel, ahead of the United States, Germany, Britain, the Soviet Union, France and Japan. With the expansion of the Romanian steel industry, France and Japan will inevitably be left behind. In addition, Romania has also achieved rapid development in coal mining, power generation, ammonia fertilizer, cement, automobiles, tractors and other industries. A large number of infrastructure constructions have allowed many related industries to fully develop, and the development of these industries has also driven the growth of other related industries. So Romania can still maintain the momentum of economic growth. The current Romanian car ownership reaches 1.47 million, which is one car for every 35 people. This is due to the fact that Romania is still the largest automobile production base in Europe. Cheap cars make many people with bulging pockets dare to buy cars. Although Volkswagen in other European countries, Romania faces competition, but with the advantage of the first mover. Let the Romanian automotive industry still have a lot of advantages, especially in the manufacture of trucks. Dongfeng trucks in Romania have always been synonymous with quality. Although various industries in Romania are developing rapidly, there are still sluggish exports. that is the oil industry, which is in a downward trend in exports. It is said that Edel opened Libyan oil at the death point, which made life in Italy much better now. Although Italy was also traumatized by the economic crisis, with the money from oil sales, Italy under Mussolini's leadership was doing fairly well, and its economic decline was not obvious. However, it is sad for the oil products exported by Romania, losing the traditional Italian oil market, and can only find solutions in other countries. Although some markets have been opened up in Spain, Turkey, Germany and other countries, Libyan crude oil in the oil market is still a strong competitor of Romania. Although Romania has a stake in Libyan oil, it is highly profitable to share with others. Therefore, in the European oil supply market, it is not easy for Romanian oil to have one more competitor faced with this situation. The Romanian oil company is also thinking of a way out. They put more energy on the research and development of high-quality petroleum products, hoping to bring more profits to the company through high-quality gasoline and diesel points. Despite some bad news, Romania's rapid economic growth is certain. This has also led to a new level of government revenue, with a total government revenue of 86.7 billion lei for the year. While income looks good, it's far from spending. In 1933 the listed fiscal expenditures of Romania reached a record 127.8 billion lei. The overspending reached 41.1 billion lei, which is shocking. Point among them, infrastructure construction accounts for 417.8 billion lei, followed by military expenditures reaching 213.3 billion lei. We will not talk about infrastructure construction, but the increase in military spending mainly comes from the research and development and construction of new weapons. Among them, the Navy mainly pays for the construction of warships, as well as the research and development of weapons. In addition to the allocation of 2 H-class battleships this year, it is also necessary to allocate funds for 1 heavy cruiser, 1 light cruiser, 3 destroyers, and 4 submarines. Among them, the submarine mainly cooperates with Germany to produce more than 400 tons of small submarines. The army, on the other hand, is developing new equipment such as artillery, tanks, rifles, and communications. Because of the large number of research and development and the large amount of equipment, the cost is also high. As for the expenditure of other departments of the government, it is much less, because these departments do not need large investment from other parties. It is said that the current tense economic situation also makes other departments dare not have extra thoughts. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 587 The New Prime Minister. The truth of 1933. One of the biggest things in Romanian politics is general elections. In fact, the general election is long overdue, and Chirachery has been in the Prime Minister's throne for 11 years. However, the general election was delayed for another year by Edel on the grounds that he needed to deal with the current economic crisis sweeping the world, and the general election was not held until 1933. Now that elections have begun, it is natural for the parties to do their best to do so. In particular, the Liberal Party, which has been in power for many years, needs to keep its ruling position in order to attract more aspiring young people to join the party. So this time they launched the former Minister of Industry Bardovin to run for election. The reason is very simple. The current Romanian economy needs an effective leader, and Bardovin's ability in the Minister of Industry is obvious to all, so it is definitely the most suitable to launch such a prime minister. As for the Millennium Second Conservative Party, it has not been able to form a cabinet and no one has become prime minister for 30 consecutive years. Such a result has a very large impact on the Conservative Party, so they are determined to win this election. This time they launched their own party leader Maherake to participate in the general election in person. Maherake was originally a teacher and joined the army to fight against the Allies after the outbreak of World War I. The victory of the war has already achieved Romania's unbelievable results, which made Maherake feel that he needs to invest in politics, and he wants to keep this result for Romania. After a friend's introduction, he joined the Conservative Party. After joining the Conservative Party, he was energetic everywhere to promote the ideas of the Conservative Party. The main thing is that Romania is a big family and everyone needs to contribute to the country. We are proud to live in Romania, and so on. Moreover, the effect of his propaganda is good, and it is also suitable for Romania, where national self-confidence is high, so he has made great contributions to the Conservative Party, which has been unable to form a cabinet for many years and still attracts a large number of supporters. So in 1928 the Conservative Party was elected leader and Maharakay is a nationalist. He believes that, no matter what nationality one is from, as long as you love the country, you can get the civil rights it deserves. And because of his remarks, he won the support of ethnic minorities of course. Maharakay also did not forget who really controls this country. Perhaps because of his military service, Maharakay thought it was a godsend for Romania to have a wise king in power. Because this will also mean avoiding the danger of hitting a wall for Romania. In addition to the two parties peeping psychology towards the prime minister's throne, other parties can only try to expand their share in parliament. No way. At present, the strength of these two parties is too strong, so that other parties cannot have any chance. Therefore, they are more focused on expanding the influence of their own party. And the idea of forming a cabinet can only come from the middle of the two parties. Edel is also very concerned about this election, because it will be a very important election for Romania. The approach of World War II made Edel pay more attention to the choice of his deputy. That's right, the position of Prime Minister is a deputy to Edel, a deputy who helps him run the country. It sounds like a throwback to Romanian politics. I think who these politicians could choose to be the king back then, but now the king chooses who to assist him. Moreover, the power is basically in the hands of the king, and the prime minister is only a part of the power from the king. But for Edel, the taste of power has penetrated into his bones after so many years in power, and it feels good to have power. In fact, Edel is uncertain about who to choose, because Romania also needs economic development during this time. If this line of thinking is followed, then Bardavin, the former Minister of Industry, is the most suitable. However, the next few years will not only be economic issues for Romania, but also military, diplomatic and other work are very important. Especially the guidance of domestic people is very important. Edel knew that World War I was propaganda to recapture Transylvania, so the Romanian people were united and burst into the war with great enthusiasm. And what slogan should I use to get the people to support the war? The word famous teacher is necessary. Choice for war, even if it's just 4 words. If the choice is good, just like Germany, let everyone use 100% of enthusiasm and energy. If it is not used well, just like Italy, the people are reluctant to leave the war and force it will make the army without combat effectiveness. Although the Romanian army must be well prepared under its own guidance, morale is very important. Moreover, the situation that Romania needs to face in the future is even more dangerous than World War I, and there is no room for Romania to relax. But in the end Edel made a decision. So in the parliamentary elections on February 15th, Mihalek of the Conservative Party won by 137 votes to the Liberal Party's Bardavin 103 votes, to become the new Prime Minister of Romania. Naturally, the Conservative Party was overjoyed by such a result, and they had been looking forward to forming a cabinet for many years. In the years that have gradually formed a bipartisan government, the Conservatives have often been the backdrop, and now it is finally their turn. Although the Conservative Party is very excited about this, Maharakay, who is about to become Prime Minister, is very calm, and he already has his own ideas about the future cabinet formation in his heart. To this end, he visited many well-known politicians in succession, and even the former Prime Minister who was still alive. He did not hesitate to visit them one by one. Sure enough, in the subsequent announcement of the cabinet list, Maharakay's idea was made public. The Conservatives still make up less than half of the cabinet, including independents and other minor parties. Even liberals are on the list. This result was something that many people in the Conservative Party did not figure out, but they were all persuaded by Mihalek on the grounds that the Romanian people chose him as Prime Minister, and that it was necessary for him to lead Romania to prosperity, and not to fight for power and profit. In fact, it is not only these words, but also convinced by Mihalek's prestige in the party. Everyone knows that this party leader is a man, and what he says about other serious matters is his voice, and he has basically done the same over the years, and when the news reached Edel, he gave a comment. This is a true patriot point, that's right. In his view, this Maharake is the kind of person with a fanatical patriotic complex. Generally such people are not suitable for the post of prime minister, because they will take the national interest too seriously. This is not to say that it is wrong to value national interests, but that too much emphasis on national interests will lead to a lack of smooth compromise by politicians. After all, politics is the art of compromise, and it is impossible for the whole country to be the kind of selfless person who is usually used for propaganda. What is rare for Maharake is that he can still maintain rationality under the fanatical patriotism, which is very rare. Generally, people who hold this characteristic and can hold high positions will be called great people. Of course, Maharake still only has this trait at present, and no one knows whether he can become a great man who will go down in history. Chapter 588 The Great Famine in Ukraine. 1. While Romania is busy choosing a new prime minister, a violent tragedy is taking place in the Soviet Republic of Ukraine, which is separated by a border. In this dry and cold weather, Riltov was looking for his traps in the woods outside the village to see if there was any prey. A round of inspections disappointed him very much, and there was no prey. Only the dead crow he picked up halfway made Riltov not feel too sad. The churning stomach acid in his stomach made Riltov extremely uncomfortable, and he knew that it was because his body was that he didn't eat. However, thinking of his mother, sister, wife, and children at home, the family was still waiting for him. Riltov could only continue to search hard in the silent field. Not far away, others could be seen looking for food in the wilderness just like him. In order to save energy, they basically don't speak. Everyone looked around vigilantly, like a lonely hungry wolf in the wilderness. However, they do not have the ability to hunt like wolves, and can only find small animals hibernating in the wilderness. If anyone can find the vole's nest, that's something to cheer about. Because the current vole's nest has its stored food, which can not only allow people to eat meat, but also get valuable food. Yes, for the current Soviet Ukrainian Republic, food is the most tempting thing. There are multiple reasons for everything, including the impact of the drought on Ukrainian domestic agriculture. However, the main influence comes from man-made, and the order to come to Moscow is also one of the important driving forces. The 5-year plan did not play a big role in the Soviet Union, but its impact was not only good, but also bad. A large number of people were gathered into urban factories, reducing the Soviet agricultural population, but its tasks were increasing. In addition, in order to develop heavy industry, the Soviet Union exported most of the grains produced by collective farms to obtain foreign exchange and equipment needed for industrialization. It is also one of the reasons since 1928, the grain collected by the Soviet government in Ukraine accounted for 42% of the total grain collection of the entire Soviet Union. You know, Ukraine is about 3 times the size of the Soviet Union. Another problem is that it is not only a predatory grain expropriation in the countryside, but also a collectivist transformation, requiring all farmers to join the collective farms. For those who did not cooperate with the reform, they were directly classified as lurks, which would be executed or exiled to Siberia. Many farmers are afraid of being classified as rich peasants, so they naturally dare not cultivate, which leads to a sharp decline in the productivity of agricultural production technology. In direct proportion to the enthusiasm of farmers in production is the grain output of Ukraine, which has been declining year by year since 1930. In 1930, Ukraine's output was 22.9 million tons, and the final amount of grain handed over to the Soviet Union was 7.8 million tons, that is, 13 were handed over. Barely survived. In 1931, the total grain output was only 17.6 million tons, and 7 million tons still had to be handed over to the Soviet Union. For this reason, farmers had to use the grain reserves, but the situation has been deteriorating. By 1932, the output was only 12.8 million tons, but the Ukrainians were stunned by the indicators, which increased instead of falling, and 7.7 million tons of grain had to be handed in. That is to say, more than 60% of the total output has to be handed over, which is far beyond the affordability of Ukrainian farmers. The peasants didn't want to starve to death, and of course they didn't want to give up. Stalin's big plans for urban industrialization were the top priority, and they had to be pushed forward steadily, and those local bureaucrats also needed to infuse political achievements to take credit, so governments at all levels, from the central to the local level, have sent people to take food by force, and they cannot even raise any objections. Anyone who has objections is anti-Bushwick. It also stipulates that theft of collective farm property can be punished by asterisk asterisk asterisk. Just to advance the collective farms, they launched a political campaign of strike hard, arresting tens of thousands of people, and executing nearly 5,000 people. However, the Central Committee of the Soviet Union issued another fatal policy, the order to implement an identity card system throughout the Soviet Union. It was stipulated that all citizens of the whole Soviet Union, except peasants, could obtain status. Then, in January 1933, the Ukrainian Politburo made a decision: prohibition of train stations from selling train tickets to peasants to leave Ukraine. Any starving people fleeing Ukraine are arrested as class enemies and will inevitably die. Therefore, farmers in Ukraine are completely tied to Ukraine and cannot even escape from the famine. If in the original history, the Ukrainian people could only endure this situation until Moscow found out that there was a major famine in Ukraine and provided relief materials, but now Ukrainian farmers have some new ideas, and that is to escape to Romania. Because western Ukraine is occupied by Romania, the connection between the two sides will not be completely blocked. Although the Soviet Ukrainian government tried its best to block the border between the two countries, it still could not completely prevent the communication between the two sides. After all, there are too many relatives between the two Ukraine. How could the Ukrainian people not understand Western Ukraine, which is under Romanian rule? Therefore, about the situation in Western Ukraine, the Ukrainian people in the Soviet Union have some understanding of it. And in the village where Riltov lived, there happened to be a person who was related in Westulan. Salvasov was a friend of Riltov, and when Riltov was looking for food in the wild, his friend also came to find him. Aunt Noel, is Riltov at home? He's not here. He's gone outside the village. Thanks. When Riltov returned to the village with the dead crow, he happened to see his friend Salvasov waiting for someone at the entrance of the village against the cold wind. Salvasov, who are you waiting for? Riltov, who clearly saw that he was his friend from afar, greeted him. After seeing Riltov, Salvasov hurried forward and said in a low voice, "I'm waiting for you. Wait, what I do?" He was dragged into a remote corner by Salvasov, who didn't understand his friend's intentions at all, and his friend was worried and looked around and said in a low voice, "I can't live this day anymore. I want to leave the village." Then you want to go? Riltov, who was about to ask questions, seemed to understand at this time, and after looking around the same way and not seeing anyone else, he said in a low voice, "You don't want to die, and you dare to say this kind of thing here?" True, Romania was a taboo subject in Soviet Ukraine. Anyone who dares to talk about this topic casually, the Home Office will let them know how serious the consequences are. Chapter 589, The Great Famine in Ukraine, Part 2. Salvasov's words made Riltov feel a mess in his heart. They were going to be fugitives. The propaganda in the village has always said that the fugitives will not end well, and even if they escape to Romania, they will be locked up. And those who were caught and escaped were regarded as traitors and shot by the Ministry of the Interior. Therefore, after Lertov learned from his friends that they were planning to escape, he hesitated a little. Although the family can't open the pot, this kind of desperate move is still very uncomfortable for him. Especially the current situation is even more frightening to Lertov, because there are villagers who have been to other places said there is no way to live outside, and some people even go to the cemetery to refurbish the buried corpses. Seeing the hesitation in Riltov's eyes, Salvasov whispered something. "Think about it once. My family plans to leave the village in 2 days. I've already had enough of everything here. If I don't leave, I'm afraid I'll starve to death like everyone else. After speaking, Solvas looked around vigilantly and left, while Riltov returned home full of thoughts. Lertov, did you find anything today? His wife, Jakarina, with wide eyes, stepped forward and asked with concern. This is the food found today. Lertov casually took out the dead crow he had picked up and handed it to his wife's swollen hand. Are you worried? Riltov's state was immediately seen by his wife. As someone next to him, Jakarina knew her husband very well. Unless there was something difficult to solve, Riltov would not be so casual. You must know that food is very precious to everyone at present. Before, my husband handed it to me carefully, afraid of losing it. It's okay, you can cook it first. Everyone is hungry. Perhaps it was the food that affected the starving wife too much, and did not continue to question her husband. With a crow and the grassroots they found, a pot of grassroots stewed crows can be completed in no time. The actions of plucking hairs and washing grassroots were completed quickly with the cooperation of the family, and the house smoked out in a short while. The family looked at the grassroots stewed bird in the pot and swallowed, and their eyes went straight to the tumbling broth in the pot. After the soup is ready, everyone gets a bowl of soup and some boiled grassroots. Under the distribution of the wife. The soups are not evenly distributed, with Lertov and his son having the most and his wife, sister, and mother the least. This distribution also has a philosophy of survival. Children are the future of the family, so more distribution is needed. Lertov is the only male in the family, and he needs to go out to find food, and he also needs to share more. As for the wife, sister, and mother, you only need to find some grassroots around, and the physical exertion is very small, so you should share less. The family ate quickly, and in a blink of an eye, son Philip drank all the soup, and finished the grassroots. Then he stared intently at his grandmother. I can't eat it, Felicity, take it and drink it. The grandson's gaze made the mother hand over the bowl. Philippines, the stern gaze from his father Riltov made his son Philipri dare not take the soup handed by his grandmother at all. Lertov, what are you doing? I can't finish it for the children. Watching her son stop her grandson's actions, the mother blamed Riltov. Don't be silly. Mother, you can't finish this soup. At most, I will bring more prey back next time. Lertov answered his mother with a bitter expression. He didn't know that his mother was distressed for her grandson, but her mother's swollen body couldn't stand it at all, and she would be dragged down sooner or later. It's not that people in the village did not starve to death. They were swollen at first, then quickly lost weight, and finally died completely skinny. He didn't want his family to end like this in the future, so he waited for the whole family to finish eating. Riltov opened the conversation. I came back to meet Solwas today, and he told me something. After attracting the family's attention, Lertov continued. Solvas told me they were going to move. Hearing the husband's words, the wife couldn't help but say, where are they going to move? There's a famine all over the place. Could it be? Chapter 590 The Great Famine in Ukraine, Part 2. Lertov and Solvas were lying quietly in the grass not far from the border, and they stared at the soldiers patrolling the border. Both of them had dark faces and beards, which had not been taken care of for many days, and the clothes on their bodies were also dark, and looked like they were fleeing. They are not like fleeing as they are. This escape journey can be described as troubled. They have been searched by the military and police, and other hungry people have been eyeing them. If they hadn't reacted quickly at that time, the two families might have been blamed by others. Yes, the phenomenon of cannibalism has appeared in Ukraine. Not only eating dead people, but also many people can't stand it because they are hungry and start attacking other people. At first they attacked lone passers-by, but later they became bold enough to spare even a small number of refugees. And they saw with their own eyes these vicious gangsters ambushing the crowd of refugees passing by. They attacked men and strong women first with clubs, then the elderly and children. These people were blushing, but their eyes were full of green, and there was no humanity in their eyes. His face was full of vicious and violent expressions, which made people shiver at first glance. Although they dodged the attacks of these men, there was still suffering along the way. Riltov's mother fell on the road. At that time, her mother fell down while walking. No matter how many people screamed, she could not wake up. The wife also got separated while escaping the pursuit of the military and police. They waited for a long time and could not wait for her to appear again. The same goes for the Solwasf family, whose mother and father were both damaged on the road. Solwasf also cried bitterly because of this, but he knew that it had become impossible to go back, and he had to rush to Romania as soon as possible to survive. The hardships and difficulties along the way finally allowed them to touch the border line, and now there is only one difficulty standing in front of them. Crossing the border is heaven for both families. However, it is not easy to get past. The army pulls barbed wire fences to bury mines on the border and also leads military dogs to patrol day and night. Yesterday, they also witnessed the scene of a family accidentally entering a minefield and being bombed to pieces. It is scary to think about it now. After observing the situation, the two quietly retreated. What should we do now? The patrols are too tight during the day to see no opportunity at all. Solwasf asked worriedly after stepping back. Liltov of course knew why Solwasf said this, because the patrols were too dense and the interval between patrols was less than 10 minutes and there was no possibility of escaping. But it's too dark at night. If we are not careful, all of us will die, and we will die. And the number of patrols at night is not much less than during the day. Those patrols have dogs, which is more difficult to pass. Then what should we do? This border patrol is too frequent, and the success rate in the past is too low. Aren't I trying to figure out a way? There's no difference between us breaking through like this and dying. We can't afford it. Now we have no food, and if we don't think of a way, we'll all starve to death on the border. How can I come up with the idea so quickly? The border that embarrassed the two was actually not so densely patrolled before. However, since last year, after the number of people crossing the border has increased, the order from above has caused the troops on the border to step up their patrols. In the past, nearly 100 people who crossed the border were caught every month, but since the second half of last year, the number of people who crossed the border increased day by day, reaching 700 or 800. And they were basically civilians who fled. At the beginning of the year, thousands of people were arrested for crossing the border, and the most was last month, when it reached 1,574. This is still court. Those who have successfully crossed the border have suffered more deaths on the way. Therefore, Kyiv's order is to strictly prevent these rich peasants who are dissatisfied with Bolshevik from smuggling across the border. So now the army is patrolling the borderline day and night. At this time, Lurtov said suddenly, I figured out a way. Any solution? Solwasf heard Riltov's words and immediately asked. It's very simple. You have seen people crossing the border and being discovered by the army before. Riltov told Solwasf about his approach. You find out how much time it takes for them to deal with these border crossings. It will take about 10 minutes to half an hour. That's right. This is our chance. When the cross-border behavior is discovered, the army will immediately arrest thousands of people. If they can't arrest them, they will immediately shoot. The sound of gunfire will attract patrols on both sides to immediately come. If this is the case, then there will be a gap of more than 20 minutes on both sides of the arrest site, and we just took the opportunity to drill through. As long as we run across the border, it will be safe, and the military will never dare to cross the border. Solwasf's eyes lit up by Riltov's method, as if he had already arrived in Romania at this moment. As if thinking of something, he frowned again. But how can we be sure that someone crossed the border in that segment? Wait for the opportunity to disperse. As soon as you hear the gunshots, run in that direction immediately. I have calculated that we will be dispersed to a distance of 2 kilometers. As long as you hear the gunshots at the border, you will immediately go around from both sides. Then where can I find what you said? Chapter 591 Expose. The Ukrainian famine sent many like the Riltov and Solwasf families fleeing to Romania. And Romania has taken in so many Ukrainians who have fled, and naturally it will not make it difficult for these poor people. Romania did not embarrass them, but also provided them with lodging and food. However, Romania has no plans to let go of the Soviet Union's performance in the Ukrainian famine. Meherike is questioning a subordinate at the Prime Minister's office. Are you all ready? Please rest assured that the Prime Minister has already prepared this time to let everyone know that the Soviets are ugly and opposed to their faces. They will definitely show their faces in front of the world's people. Go. After sending the subordinate away, Maharakay remembered the words of meeting Edel in the palace. This is a great opportunity for Romania, and the Ukrainian people who have fled are the best proof. As long as we expose the matter, the whole civilized society will condemn this behavior that does not care about people's livelihood. But be careful, don't talk about it. Instead, we should focus on the fact that the Soviet Union still exported grain during the famine years. It is best to lead public opinion to the genocide of the Ukrainian people by the Soviet government, which will deepen the resentment of the Ukrainians towards the Soviet Union, alienate their connection. Prime Minister Mahalake deeply agreed with the king's idea. The result of this not only increased the pressure on the Soviet Union, but also hit the European people's recognition of the Soviet Union. Many people in Europe now regard the Soviet Union as a model for the working class, to be the master of the country, and feel good about it. Now that this incident broke out, at least many people's recognition of it will be reduced. And it can also deal a blow to the Soviet Union's exports, especially the bulk of the grain exported in exchange for foreign exchange, and it must be linked to the lives of Ukrainians. The slogan has been thought out. Every grain of grain exported by the Soviet Union is taken from the hungry people in Ukraine. To buy grain from the Soviet Union is to take the lives of others. Although it is impossible to stop the Soviet Union's determination to export grain, many profiteers can use this excuse to lower prices, which can reduce the foreign exchange obtained by the Soviet Union and increase the difficulty of its industrialization. It can be said to be the best of both worlds, so Romania must make this matter public, so that people in other countries can take a good look at the face of the Soviet Union. The next day, almost all the newspapers in Romania were covering the Great Famine in Ukraine. One of the largest newspapers in Romania, the Romanian Daily, published photos taken from Ukraine in the newspaper. In the photo, several scrawny Ukrainian women sat numbly on the ground with their skinny children with yellow faces. There is also an old farmer looking at the dry farmland with the same thin eyes. The newspaper wrote below that there is currently a great famine in Ukraine, and the Soviets completely ignored the local victims and forcibly took away the food from their homes and left them to fend for themselves. And in order to guarantee its own ambitions, the Soviet government exported the food seized from the Ukrainian victims to Europe in large quantities in exchange for the required technology and equipment. As far as this newspaper knows, in order to cover up the disaster in Ukraine, the Soviet Union ordered to prohibit train stations from selling train tickets to peasants to leave Ukraine. Moreover, Ukrainians who fled to my country said that they could not help being hunted by the military and police in Ukraine, and some people were too hungry to start eating people. They first dug out the recently deceased people from the cemetery to eat, and later developed to attack other people. The Soviet Union has always advertised itself as a country where the people are the masters of the country. It is ridiculous that such a creepy thing can happen to a country where the people are the masters of the country. Here we need to ask whether the Soviets dare to let people from other countries visit Ukraine. In the spirit of conscience, this newspaper appeals to those who buy grain from the Soviet Union to stop using it. What you buy is the rations for the victims of the Ukrainian disaster. Buying a little less food from the Soviet Union is the best contribution to the disaster victims. The hype of the Romanian newspapers about the famine in Ukraine soon spread the wind to other countries. In order to attract public attention, many newspapers have sent reporters to Romania to interview those who escaped. And what they got from the victims was exactly as reported by the Romanian media. In Romania, in order to better reflect the scale of the victims, they live in a concentrated area. So these reporters were shocked to see the dense mass of Ukrainian victims. The report it sent back further increased the public's understanding of the famine in Ukraine. The Times published a photo. Above is a man with a dish on his face, and the introduction below says, his name is Lurtov, from a collective farm called Domokov in Zaporozhye, Ukraine. On February 16th, the Lurtov family, 5, and their close friend, 6, escaped from their hometown. They were hunted by the military and police, on the grounds that they did not have a permit issued by the farm, and they could not run around, or they would be arrested and sent to the labor camp. According to Lurtov, he never saw anyone released from the labor camp. Also been hunted by cannibal thugs, who are said to have been nearly caught by them once. Finally, there were border patrol interceptions, and Riltov witnessed several executions by the military. He and his friend's family, who had gone through hardships, had a total of 6 people. Don't think this number is low. In this refugee camp, a lot of families only run out of 1 or 2 people. In our interviews, we found that such tragedies are very common in their mouths. This is what happens to almost everyone. Then we can infer from this that the social order in Ukraine has collapsed, and there are both natural disasters and asterisk here. However, most of the factors come from asterisk, and these people are basically Ukrainians. And I also learned from them that the Soviet government was not interested in the disaster in Ukraine, nor did it take any measures to relieve the disaster. This makes me wonder, are these Ukrainians not nationals of the Soviet Union, and they are now being left aside? Why? The Times report took the Ukrainian famine to a new level. Many charities have asked the Soviet Union to allow them to go to Ukraine for disaster relief, but they were categorically rejected by the Soviet Union. It is better to hold on to it than to put these people in Ukraine, which the Moscow government is still aware of. Point in the face of international public opinion. On the one hand, the Soviet Union flatly denied that it had suffered disasters in its own country, but on the other hand, it had to provide some food for disaster relief. So how much food did the Soviet Union take out? 350,000 tons of grain. If this amount of food is to help millions of people, it is not bad. But unfortunately, there are 30 million people in Ukraine affected by the disaster. This amount of food is impossible to sustain, and the famine in Ukraine will continue. When people in other countries learned that the Soviet Union banned people from other countries from entering the Soviet Union, and also slandered those who fled to Romania as criminals, their disgust for the Soviet Union was much higher. Politicians from many countries took the opportunity to point out to their citizens that this is the fate of the red parties in power, and they will not care about the lives of the people. Some people even wrote in the newspapers that this was the intentional massacre of the Ukrainian ethnic group by the Soviet Union for ulterior motives. As for this statement, the benevolent sees the benevolent and the wise sees the wisdom. However, with the understanding of the famine in Ukraine, the European people's interest in red ideas has greatly diminished, and the guild movement in Europe has also fallen into a downturn. Chapter 592 Chancellor Hitler came to power. While the world is talking about the famine in Ukraine, Germany is in political turmoil. In early November 1931, Hindenburg met Hitler. Hindenburg had no favors for the Bohemian corporal, and later told his cronies he can only be a postmaster at best. Hindenburg was able to reappoint Brüning as chancellor in 1932 because all the democratic parties in the parliament at that time, including the German Social Democratic Party and the German Centre Party, supported Hindenburg in order to prevent Adolf Hitler from becoming German chancellor in the spring of 1932. Hindenburg's 7-year term expired, and the old president was willing to retire, but due to the mockery and irony of the party members, Hindenburg, who was already in his 80s, decided to come out again, and he was nominated as a candidate again. The party nominated Hitler as its candidate. S candidate is Thalmann. In the first round of elections, Hindenburg had 496 votes. Hitler had 30, and neither candidate had an absolute majority. The second round of elections was held on April 10th, and Hindenburg was elected with 53 over Hitler's 368. However, a few weeks later, old comrade Graner was forced to resign as minister after being framed by the Schleicher conspiracy. In the process of this election, Hitler knew that his prestige among the people was inferior to that of Hindenburg, so he put forward the slogan "Respect Hindenburg, vote for Hitler," trying to use Hindenburg's momentum to elevate his own worth. As a result, Hitler lost the election, but he left a good impression on Hindenburg. After Hindenburg was re-elected as president, he ignored the opposition of the general public, prepared to use Hitler, and said to those who advised him to be wary of Hitler, "I should turn poachers into forest watchers." In 1932, Hindenburg was 85 years old. Because of his declining age and physical and mental health, Hindenburg increasingly relied on his own small group of right-wing friends and advisors to comrades in arms. These included his son Oskar von Hindenburg, neighbors of his estate, Lieutenant General Kurt von Schleicher and Franz von Papen. These people persuaded him to fire Brüning and nominate Papen as prime minister because they wanted Papen's policies to be more rightward. After this plan failed, the men considered a coup d'état for this purpose, but Schleicher refused to provide troops for the coup, so the plan was abandoned. It was later proposed to organize a noble cabinet by Franz von Papen, who had close ties to the forces. In order to fulfill its miracle of taming the party, it attempted to invite party members into the cabinet. Hindenburg was very fond of Papen, so he respected his authority, but Papen failed to tame the party. Hitler at this time did not buy Hindenburg's account at all. Hitler saw the strength of his German Workers' Party in the general election, so he categorically rejected Hindenburg's request for him to form a cabinet with Papen, and put forward, as the leader of Germany's largest political party, "I'm responsible for the entire power including all aspects." Hitler not only despised Papen, but also held a hostile attitude towards Schleicher, who succeeded Papen as chancellor in December, insisting that he form his own cabinet, while Hindenburg disagreed with Hitler's domineering. Seeing that Hitler might threaten his own political status, he couldn't help being annoyed. He immediately turned 180 degrees and publicly stated, "Out of my obligation to the motherland and my conscience, I have no right to hand over the power of the whole government to the movement that wants to take power alone." In November 1932, a group of industrialists and bankers submitted a letter to Hindenburg demanding the appointment of Hitler as chancellor. But on December 2, 1932, Hindenburg ousted Prime Minister Papen, who had close ties with the forces, and let Schleicher form a cabinet. This hand directly threatened Hitler's plans for a full-scale seizure of power, because the power was still fledgling at the time, and Schleicher had a plan to split the party. Therefore, Hitler asked Papen to apologize on the one hand, and on the other hand, he invited the leading figures of the German monopoly consortium to submit a **** book to Hindenburg, so as to accommodate him. Hindenburg, who was originally a representative of the right wing, saw that Hitler had changed his mind and was willing to cooperate with him, so he had the idea of using this forest guard again. At this time, Schleicher made a move that made Hindenburg extremely old. He planned to confiscate the bankrupt Junkers manor in East Germany. As a spokesperson, Hindenburg of course opposed the plan and supported Juncker, while Schleicher did not get the support of Hindenburg, but made an amazing move. Not only did he refuse to associate with the opposing Junkers, but he declared war openly against them. In this way, Hindenburg's living room was filled with representatives of the Juncker family, angrily demanding the dissolution of the Schleicher government. Not only that, but Schleicher took the military's anger on himself. Schleicher, as a military-turned-chancellor, should remember that Juncker and the military corps have been closely linked for 200 years. The beneficiary of Schleicher's folly was Adolf Hitler, who skillfully exploited the mounting discontent. In a desperate bid to make a comeback from his November defeat and regain his prestige among the masses, he delivered speeches in nearly every city and village in Lip. Wherever he went, he was warmly welcomed. On January 15, he received 396% of the popular vote, an increase of 17%. This proves that his personal speech is quite attractive. At this time, according to Reason, Hitler should be the chancellor, but Hindenburg was still dissatisfied with it. The biggest obstacle was not the president himself, but the president's son, who openly despised Hitler. But Oskar Hindenburg's sentiments were driven by hubris, not ideological differences. To resolve their differences, Oskar accepted the invitation to meet at Ribbentrop's house on the evening of Sunday, January 22. Papen, Hitler, Göring and Frank were already waiting in the living room. The atmosphere was tense. After an awkward exchange, Hitler suddenly suggested to Oskar that the two go to the next room. As a result of the secret conversation between the two, according to Oskar, Hitler monopolized the topic. Only he, Hitler, can save Germany from the red element. Only he, Hitler, can be a strong chancellor. No other government can stand without the support of the National Socialist Party. Oskar also agreed to make Hitler chancellor. So the biggest hurdle was lifted, and now Hitler just had to wait for Hindenburg to be appointed chancellor. While Hindenburg agreed with Hitler as Chancellor, he demanded that the new government must be General Werner von Blumberg, but the Minister of Defense and Papen as Deputy Chancellor the next morning. Papen met with Hitler to put forward Hindenburg's demands, and Hitler agreed to Hindenburg's demands. But Hitler also put forward his own demands, that is, to hold new elections and issue an enabling law, giving him more powers than the previous Chancellor. By the afternoon, Papen reported to Hindenburg that the parties had agreed to the new government. It was only then that Papen mentioned Hitler's demands for a new election, and it sounded plausible. He underscored Hitler's promise. This was the last general election point, now that everything was negotiated. Then Hindenburg signed an order to end Schleicher's chancellorship, followed by People's Hitler as Chancellor. At this point Hitler finally boarded the throne of Chancellor. The man who didn't even graduate from high school, the man who failed to get into the Academy of Fine Arts, the man who used to be a tramp on the streets of Vienna, is now, on January 30th, 1933, the Chancellor of Germany. Adolf Hitler suddenly became Chancellor, and the party members in Berlin were most surprised. For years, they lived in poverty, risking their lives on the streets of the capital, often against the wishes of the head of state. Now, their dream has come true in one fell swoop. Most people, however, learned about the torchlight that night through the newspapers. Every able-bodied stormtrooper and SS member went out in uniform. Many people thought they would have trouble with the police again, but they were surprised to find that even the police were smiling, and some even wore swastikas. The stormtroopers, holding torches, set off from Tegerden at dusk, marched on military music, and marched in good order under the Brandenburg Gate. Thousands of Wehrmacht joined them. Hour after hour passed, still singing Whistle Forest Song and other battle songs, as they marched down Wilhelmstrasse. They greeted Hindenburg first. He was standing at a window in the presidential palace. After a while, they greeted Hitler. Hitler stood in front of a window of the chancellery, looking down at them affectionately. The trees on both sides of William Street were full of young boys, and the children hung over the iron fence like clusters of grapes. In the cold winter night, the fire stream illuminates the dark night, and the intoxicating warm atmosphere is getting stronger and stronger. All of this was rehearsed by performance master Goebbels. Even Hitler asked inexplicably, where did he get these tens of thousands of torches in just a few hours? The reason is that Goebbels controlled the radio, and through live broadcasts, the whole of Germany enjoyed the magnificent view of the torch. Papen stood behind Hitler, watching the torch. He found that people shouted respectfully to him as the procession approached the Hindenburg. When they saw Hitler, they cheered wildly. The contrast is stark, and seems to highlight the transition from a moribund rule to a new revolutionary force. It was an extraordinary experience, that never-ending chorus of cheers and triumphant cries of cheers, cheers to victory. It was like a wake-up call, ringing in my ears. Chapter 593 G33 Semi-Automatic Rifle. Hitler's coming to power also marked that Germany would embark on the road of expanding its arms and preparing for war, which was a challenge for Edel, because the next large number of new weapons will be developed by various countries. For Romania, it will also mean challenges. Fortunately, however, there is still good news. After years of research and development, the new rifle developed by Gadlia Defense has finally come to fruition. This Gadlia Defense company is the original Bucharest arsenal, which was split after the end of World War I among them. The artillery was assigned to the new weapons factory in Lviv, which belongs to the RK company, and the production and research and development of firearms are attained. I need to say more here. At present, the Romanian Arms Group has the following companies responsible for research and development. The Gadlia Defense Company is responsible for the development of firearms, the RK Company is responsible for the development of artillery, and the Romanian state-owned second manufacturing plant is responsible for the development and production of tanks, mainly Ploiesti Machinery Plant 1 and Lviv Machinery Plant 2. Konda Aircraft Manufacturing Company is responsible for the development and production of fighter jets, while Folkshinie Aircraft Manufacturing Company is responsible for the development and production of reconnaissance aircraft and bombers. As for the research and development of passenger aircraft and transport aircraft, it is the responsibility of Constanta Aircraft Manufacturing Company. The Navy ships are the Varna Naval Shipyard, and only a few small warships are built at the Constanta Naval Shipyard. The main reason is that Varna is more suitable as a military port than Constanta, and the busy Constanta is not conducive to the construction of warships. As for Odessa, the best port in the Black Sea, it was not selected by the Navy because it was too close to the Soviet Union. As for other equipment such as gas masks, poison gas, radar, etc., they are all produced by other companies. Many are purchased from civilian companies, all to reduce costs. In fact, the product quality of private companies is also good. As long as the inspection is done well, some private companies of military supplies can also do well. Of course, the Gadlia Defense Company that Edel will go to is not included in this list. This is a standard state-owned enterprise. Since it is a state-owned enterprise, there must be some common problems of state-owned enterprises, but as long as the tasks assigned by the military can be completed, as long as it is not excessive, neither Edel nor the military care about it. It is no different from Edel going to other places. It is still the process of welcoming at the door. When the military arrives, a lot of people will come, but it is still headed by ferry. Let's go see the results first. Edel did not pay attention to the introduction of the general manager of the Gadlia Defense Company beside him, and directly proposed to take a look at the new gun first. Without the slightest embarrassment of being ignored, the general manager named Ledermank immediately led the way. Your Majesty, the chief of the general staff, please. The group led them to the shooting range. There are several tables on the side of the shooting range, with several sample guns on them, and a middle-aged man in a white coat and a little bald is waiting here. This is Mr. Walterland, our chief designer of firearms, and the chief designer of this semi-automatic rifle. General Manager Ledermank introduced the designer of this prototype gun. Hello, Mr. Walterland. Edel held out his hand, and he always had the respect for technicians. Hello, Your Majesty, it's a pleasure to meet Your Majesty. Can you explain this gun to us? In the presence of Edel and the military, Mr. Walterland began to explain the gun. This is a semi-automatic rifle that we temporarily named G33, which was initially pre-researched in 1921. At that time, the bolt-action rifle in World War I was not strong enough and the submachine gun was too close, lacking 100 to 300 meters. It is specially developed for continuous firepower. Of course, we are not alone in developing semi-automatic rifles. As far as I know, the United States, Britain, France and other countries have plans to develop them, but we in Springfield in the United States have persisted. After introducing the origin, Mr. Walterland picked up a sample gun and continued. This G33 semi-automatic rifle has a total length of 11-12mm and a barrel length of 617mm. It uses a V-shaped rear sight and a blade-shaped front sight. The bolt uses a gas-operated, rotary locking bolt. The effective range is 800 meters, but the best range is 450 meters. The weight of the MT gun is 439 kilograms, and the combat weight is 471 kilograms. Muzzle velocity 835 meters per second. The 792x57 rifle is used. After speaking, Walterland picked up an MT magazine and said, "This is the magazine for the G33 semi-automatic rifle, which can hold 10 rifle rounds. Enough to form suppressive firepower on the enemy, even without a machine gun." Regarding Walterland's explanation, all the soldiers present, except Edel, are soldiers, so it is useless to know that it is useless. Only the user can know whether it is useful or not. You go up and try this gun. As soon as Felit waved his hand at the back, someone naturally stepped forward to pick up the prepared rifle and began to test fire. And Edel and the military are naturally waiting for the results of the test. As a result, there were dense gunshots in the shooting range. These people were test shooters prepared by the military. They used different shooting frequencies to test the prototype guns in their hands. No way, the rifle is the main weapon in the hands of the soldiers, and it must be guaranteed that it is worthy of the soldiers' trust. And now it's just the military's first trial. If the military is satisfied, the next step is to equip the troops in small batches. If the soldiers equipped with these rifles are also satisfied with them, they will naturally start a large number of changes. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. we cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 594, Congressional Arson Case. It's really exciting. Edel, who was sitting in the office, was holding a telegram from Germany and talking to himself. That's right, a telegram from Germany, said a Dutch asterisk named Marinus van der Lubbe had set fire to the Reichstag, and the German government said after an investigation that he was behind it. The messenger is German asterisk point like the original time and space at 2200 hours on February 27, 1933, the Berlin Fire Brigade received news that there was a fire in the Reichstag. The fire was not extinguished until 23:30. An inspection of the fire scene by firefighters and police found 20 bundles of unburned arson fuel and a shaky man named Marinus van der Lubbe, a Dutch asterisk, an unemployed construction worker who had only recently arrived in Germany. But Edel, who has the memory of later generations, knows that this is just Hitler's promise to fulfill his promise to come to power. Because he had an agreement with Juncker before he came to power, the main threat asterisk needs to be eliminated. In fact, it doesn't matter who is the mastermind behind the Congress arson case, and maybe even personal behavior is not important. The key is that the new Hitler needs someone to become the mastermind. On the other hand, the party that came to power has long been resentful of the asterisk for obstructing itself. Despite Hitler's success as chancellor, after 6 weeks in power, the fate of the Brown Revolution he led remains a question mark. The Prussian government was urgently dissolved, causing serious concern in other states. In mid-February, Göring carried out a fierce purge of the Prussian police, purging all those he did not trust. He ordered his police force, at all costs, to outlaw anything hostile to the SA, the SS and the Wehrmacht. Because these organizations have the most constructive people for the country, the job of the police is to assist in any form of National Socialist propaganda. He then issued a statement to the effect that for various organizations hostile to the state, the police should act decisively and can use weapons at any time. If they are missing their duties, they are punished. This is an open declaration of war on the asterisk people. Marxists and their sympathizers like Prussia, the 7 smaller states had submitted politically, but the larger states including Bavaria, the birthplace of National Socialism, refused to submit to Hitler's government. At the same time, the asterisk people called on the masses to rise up and resist. On February 21st, the League of Red Warriors incited the young proletarians to disarm the SS and SA. In the future Red Army, every comrade is a commander. This is the oath we made to the soldiers of the Soviet Red Army. Neither machine guns, asterisk nor prisons can spoil our struggle. We are tomorrow's owner. A few days later, the official mouthpiece of the asterisk Red Sailor publicly called for violence. Workers, enter the fortifications. Advance to victory. Load the bullets. Pull the fuse of the grenade. These revolutionary calls may be mere slogans, but Göring took them seriously or acted on them. He attacked the Karl Liebknecht building in Berlin on the 24th of February. The official announcement said the police had copied asterisk plans for an uprising. On the evening of February 26th, Hannison predicted that this revolution would break out into war at a time when the atmosphere was so tense. The congressional arson attack on February 27th immediately jolted the party's nerves. It is said that when Hitler saw the sky turning red, he shouted, "It was asterisk." After shouting, he went to the scene of the fire with Goebbels. Once at the scene, they found Göring in the still burning building. Subsequently, cabinet ministers, officials and other dignitaries, including the mayor of Berlin, Prince O, the police chief and the British ambassador, came one after another. The person in charge of the preliminary investigation walked in. Rudolf Diels, chief of police and police at the Prussian Ministry of the Interior, reported to the Führer and Göring that the arsonist, a Dutchman named van der Lubbe, had been found in the Reichstag, half naked. An interrogator shouted angrily, "Why did you do this?" The radical youth replied, "For asterisk." However, the party did not believe his words. Göring said, This is the beginning of the **** uprising. Not a minute can be wasted, Hitler said. Give them a little color. Whoever dares to stop us will knock him down. He blushed because of his excitement. The German people are too weak to grow up. The ***** who are the officials must be shot. The ***** who are the representatives will be shot tonight. All to be hanged. ***** friends to be locked up. This also applies to Social Democrats and Reichsbürger, state pests. At the same time Göring was furious at those who wrote for the official Prussian newspaper. The draft is only 20 lines long and only mentions one arsonist. Göring glanced at it and shouted, "It's all nonsense." As a police report, this may be good, but it's not a bulletin in my mind. Not at all. He grabbed a blue pencil and changed the 100 pounds of pyrotechnic material to 1000 lbs. The author countered that a person cannot carry such a heavy load. Göring retorted, "Nothing is impossible. Why do you say there is only one person? There are 10 or even 20. Don't you understand what's going on? This is a sign of a uprising." Göring rewrote the communique, pointing out that van der Lubbe's accomplices were two ****s in the Congress. The original author asked him to sign, because it was not an official report, but a political document. "Only if you officially sign it," he said, "will I hand it over to the news agency and they will accept it." Göring reluctantly drew a capital G on it. At this time, all the police stations were calling to arrest the **** members of Congress, as well as the **** members of the provincial and city councils. **** officials will also be arrested, and all red newspapers will be closed. And in the cabinet meeting, Hitler declared that the current crisis compels us to recklessly settle accounts with ****, and not to rely on the law. Therefore, he suggested that an emergency decree be passed to protect the country from the red, but it must sound purely defensive and not too conspicuous. At the same time, he only mentioned it lightly. This is a special measure to protect the documents of the German people. However, when Frank read the draft, it became apparent that the decree had removed most of the rights a democratic society could afford. First, it abolished the civil liberties enshrined in the Weimar Constitution: freedom of speech, freedom of the press, the sanctity of the family, the secrecy of correspondence and telephone conversations, the freedom of association, the inviolability of private property, etc. It then empowered the German Interior Minister to temporarily control state governments that were unable to maintain order. Not a single minister opposed disenfranchisement. Only Papen suggested that meddling in the affairs of the states would sow deep hatred, especially in Bavaria. Papen's dissent was also fleeting. He also made only a few minor revisions, namely revisions that night. Hitler went to Hindenburg with him. The head of state argued that this decree was necessary to suppress the Red Revolution. Papen and Messner did not comment, and the president signed it. Chapter 595: The arrival of 1934. For more than a year, Hitler continued to purge the destabilizing factor Roma, disbanding the SAD in exchange for military support for the party. In Romania, Edel continued to vigorously develop the economy, and at the same time, increased the development of new weapons. The Romanian economy developed rapidly during the year, with an annual growth rate of 784. A large number of goods are dumped to neighboring countries, and ship after ship full of goods are shipped to other regions. Among them, the implementation of the Far East Military Reorganization Plan has greatly increased Romania's arms exports. This was approved by the Chancellor by drawing up a plan for the reorganization of their national army by Lieutenant General Modelk and Admiral Sieckert. Regarding the early appearance of Admiral Sieckert in the Far East, Romania is credited with it. The German side will naturally not sit still when it sees Romania encroaching on its military domain in the region. Although the two countries have good relations in Europe, the German side will not be reconciled when it comes to the Far East market and important raw material importers. They have dispatched several batches of military delegations to try to regain their military influence in the country, but with little success. Finally, the German government sent its own ace, General Sieckert, to gradually suppress the penetration of Romania's military influence. After all, Admiral Sieckert is well known in the reorganization of the army, and Modelk is indeed inferior to the other party in ability, unless Romania sends Marshal Pretian or General Felite, the chief of staff. However, it is a pity that Marshal Pretian is not in good health, and cannot travel far, and Felite is the active chief of the general staff. He is too busy with Romania's military reform. How can he go to the Far East? So in the end it was the Germans who had the upper hand in the military regiment. According to the plan of the latest army reform proposal, a total of 60 divisions across the country are called reorganization divisions, and they are reorganized according to the suggestions of the two countries among them. Since Romania has exported several batches of ordnance to it, the plan intends to concentrate on using these remaining ordnance, and then purchase some ordnance, to complete the reorganization of the first 6 divisions. Because many of the ordnance of this first batch of divisions were adjusted from other units, they were also called adjustment divisions. Each of these 6 divisions has jurisdiction over an artillery battalion, a chariot defense artillery company, and an anti-aircraft artillery company, and the regiment directly subordinates an infantry artillery company and a small artillery company. Its entire division has 11,423 people, wild artillery horse-drawn division, or 11,579, mountain artillery and horse-drawn division, equipped with 12 wild, mountain, artillery, 24 small artillery, 24, 82 mortars, 74 heavy machine guns, 336 light machine guns. These units are called adjustment divisions, which are characterized by a mixed system of 9 infantry companies, and the addition of light machine guns to the squads. The original regiment mortars belonged to each battalion as a platoon, to enhance the firepower of tactical units. The original battalion belonged to small artillery. The platoons are concentrated into companies, under the direct jurisdiction of the regiment, as a firepower for war. As for the advanced reorganization plan of Dero's mechanic, many weapons and equipment were purchased from Romania, because of Romania's involvement. Because Romania is starting to change its clothes, the price of export arms is relatively cheap. So in 1933 Romania exported to the Far East more than 17,000 G98L. The Romanian improved version was similar to the 1924 version of the Morza rifle, and more than 16,000 bullets, 3,000 ZB-26 light machine guns, 24, 37mm anti-tank guns, and 48, 75mm mountain and field guns. There are also a batch of gas masks, radio stations, field telephones, and other military supplies. This batch of arms purchase contracts worth nearly $50 million uses domestic specialties such as tungsten, zinc, tin and other combat readiness materials as funds for the purchase. Romania was one step ahead of Germany, and began to prepare for war. Moreover, Romania has gradually updated its equipment through arms sales to the Far East. In addition, the first fighter prototype requested by the military also made its maiden flight at Condor Aircraft Manufacturing Company. This new aircraft uses a lot of pioneering technology, using a series of advanced technologies such as retractable landing gear and all-metal structure, so that this new aircraft can fly at a speed of 467 km per hour. The modified aircraft adopts a single wing under the cantilever, and adopts more straight-line modifications in appearance. In terms of structure, it reasonably chooses high-strength thin aluminum plates and precision die casting parts. The wing load of the aircraft is 170 kg square meters. The aspect ratio is 60-65. The vertical tail is semicircular, and the horizontal tail is rectangular, in order to ensure a larger angle of attack in level flight. The performance of the prototype made the military very satisfied, and then began to further optimize it. By Condor Aircraft Manufacturing Company strive to make this fighter a world-leading existence in the future. In addition, the development of radio reconnaissance equipment, radar, jointly developed by Romania and Italy, is also progressing smoothly. At present, with sufficient funds, the personnel of the two countries have basically solved the impact of severe weather and environment, and also initially solved the problems of high power heat dissipation. It is believed that the radars of the two countries in the future will not be later than others, and researchers of the two countries are convinced of this. Of course, these military studies are still ongoing, but Romania has also made new contributions in the military. In view of the performance of the armored division in the local war against the Soviet Union, Romania established a new armored division, the 2nd Armored Division. The establishment of the 2nd Armored Division has also made other countries see Romania's emphasis on armored troops, and many domestic generals are eager to compete for the division commander. In order to compete for the position of the division commander, many generals expressed their opinions on the armored forces during this period. Moreover, the movement of the current three giants of the military has reached a very frequent level, and even the last one is waiting outside the door before the next one. Even Marshal Priest, who was unwell, was troubled by the visits of these people. However, in the end, the commander of the division fell to Gen Antonescu, deputy commander of the cavalry division, which surprised many. Speaking of which, Major General Antonescu has his own advantages as the commander of the 2nd Armored Division. First of all, the cavalry division and the armored division have something in common in the way of fighting, and secondly, Major General Antonescu's own ability is also outstanding, and he also has an advantage in age. In addition, he is a good friend with Lieutenant General Hoffman, who led the development of the Romanian armored force. Therefore, after careful analysis, it is not surprising that he served as the commander of the 2nd Armored Division. However, the 2nd Armored Division has just begun to form, and it is full of new recruits, which is also a huge test for it. If he does not do well, I believe that many people are willing to take his place. As for other projects that are still in the intense research and development process, there is no good news yet. However, some media from countries such as Britain and France claimed that the newly built battleships in Romania were seriously exceeding the standard, and they did not look like 35,000-ton battleships at all. For this kind of news, the Romanian government has made a just worded criticism. The Romanian battleship is completely in line with the Washington Naval Treaty. I hope these tabloids will not make random guesses. In any case, Romania spent 1933 at a time when the continent was getting busier. Chapter 596, The Wind Rises in Bulgaria, Part 1. While Romania's socially harmonious economy is fully developed, its neighbor Bulgaria is in turmoil. The reason is very simple. The pro-Romanian Social Democratic Party won the election, and its chairman Krustev is about to become the new Prime Minister of Bulgaria. Speaking of which, it is a matter of time before the social democracy wins, because there are nearly 1 million Bulgarians working in Romania, and these people and their families are the foundation of the social democracy. They are full of envy for life in Romania, and full of disappointment for the chaotic political situation in the country and the depressed economy. And the appeal of the propositions preached by the Social Democrats is deadly. However, due to the hostility of other parties to the Social Democratic Party, it has repeatedly failed to win elections. And now, with Bulgaria's continued depression amid the economic crisis, many people have turned their hope to the Social Democratic Party. They don't think Bulgaria can get to the level of Romania under the leadership of the Social Democrats, but it shouldn't get any worse. So in the general election at the beginning of 1934, the Social Democrats finally won the general election. They got 54 votes and qualified to form an independent cabinet. In the face of the situation that the Social Democratic Party wants to form an independent government, other parties in Bulgaria strongly oppose it. They have stated that the Social Democratic Party is Romania's puppet party, trying to merge Bulgaria into Romania. Really, they guessed. And Krustev is a Bulgarian traitor and needs to be expelled from Bulgarian nationality. The reason why these parties reacted so much is because the Social Democrats are too well funded compared to other parties. Moreover, he advocated that many radical national element be regarded as the enemy, for which Krustev also encountered several assassinations. The most dangerous one was when Krustev was speaking at Veliko Tarnovo when a police officer shot him at close range. But fortunately, some people pushed the **** and interfered with its shooting, so that the leader of the Social Democratic Party was not killed on the spot. Although Bugi saved his life, He also suffered a bullet in his left arm, which caused him pain for many days. In fact, this has a lot to do with the Balkan clan tradition of revenge. Even Bulgarian **** likes assassination. In the first 30 years of the 20th century, 2 kings of Serbia and later Yugoslavia were murdered. The murderers were the official core and the Croatian nationalists. A monarch was deposed in Montenegro, 2 kings in Greece were deposed 3 times, and a king was killed by a monkey. Even the uncontested Boris III was assassinated. On April 13, 1925, Boris III and Ilchev, a famous entomologist from the Royal Museum of Natural History, went to the Balkan Mountains to collect insect specimens. The next morning, they were sent by Bulgarian **** on their way back to the capital. Ilchev and the king's hunting guide were killed, the driver was seriously wounded, and the king's adjutant was also wounded. Boris took over the steering wheel, ran over the killer's feet, and successfully escaped. On the morning of the 15th, General Konstantin Georgiev, the founder of the League of Officers, was killed by a plainclothes police officer when he led his children out of the church to cross the road. On the 16th, when people held a funeral for Georgiev in the Cathedral of the Holy Worship, a bomb that had been hidden on the roof in advance exploded, and the church was blown up. More than 250 bodies were exhumed from the rubble, among them the archbishop, the mayor of Sofia, the police chief, and no less than 14 generals. Boris, who attended the entomologist and hunting guide's funeral first, survived the explosion 15 minutes earlier as he prepared to go to Holy Worship Cathedral. After the bombing, the Communist Party of China quickly issued a statement denying that it had anything to do with these terrorist incidents, and then said that the bombing was the personal behavior of several extremists. However, this justification was of no use in the face of the vengeful officer corps. The Bulgarian government first proposed from the prison that the number of prisoners killed in the Holy Worship Cathedral should be executed. And then killed more suspects without trial. The leader of the Communist Party, Georgy Dimitrov, fled to Moscow 2 years ago, but one of his brothers died in the raid. This also makes Bulgaria almost lost its presence in Bulgaria, which can be described as a heavy loss. So compared with other countries in the Balkans, the peaceful Romanian society is so enviable. However, although the Social Democratic Party won the election, it still needs a test to come to power. Among them, the right-wing political alliance of officers and the Link group is a hurdle. These officers and their supporters, who had always dreamed of restoring Bulgarian glory, were wary of the Social Democrats coming to power, because they feared that the party would come to power and make Bulgaria a vassal of Romania, which would seriously damage their national self-esteem. To this end, Kirstev intends to meet with the leaders of the Officers League and the Links League, and tell them about his policy, in order to dispel the concerns of both parties. As for the opinion of King Boris, it doesn't matter. Kirstev has long been dissatisfied with the so-called inaction of the king. As the monarch of Bulgaria, he has no confidence in taking responsibility at all. The king needs to take at least half of the responsibility for the chaos in Bulgaria. That's right. Kirstev looks down on Boris III so much. In his opinion, when faced with domestic turmoil, the king would rather hide in the palace to study his clock machinery than go out of the palace to deal with the situation, which is completely irresponsible. Look at the wise monarch in Romania, who is dealing with government affairs almost every day. If not, he is inspecting the situation of the people and visiting the army, and have a keen eye to see who is the ultimate winner in a world war, and chose an appropriate time to join in, and the results were richly rewarded. I think that the territory and population of Bulgaria and Romania were not far behind, but now you can see the importance of a wise monarch to a country by comparing them. This will not only lead the country to grow and develop, but also improve the self-confidence of the nation. Compared to it, Boris III is completely incompetent. That's right. That's what Kirstev admired for Edel. Because he is fed up with the current chaotic situation in Bulgaria and has lost confidence in Bulgaria's future. Although the monarch wields the power alone, the power of the prime minister is pitifully small. But Kirstev would rather have such a monarch in Bulgaria, who, even if his dictatorship can make Bulgaria stronger, he is willing to cheer for him. Chapter 597. The Wind Rises in Bulgaria, Part 2. In Tekrimi, on the outskirts of Sofia, there is a villa which is KRSTV's residence in the capital. Today, there are guards around the villa, because its owner needs to receive two distinguished guests today. That is, the leader of the officers union, General Osei Ivanov, and the leader of the link group, General Simon Georgiev. When the two generals came to the door of the villa, Khrushchev, who had been waiting here, immediately greeted them. Thank you two generals for visiting the humble house. Seeing that the Social Democratic chairman Kirstov came out to greet him, General Ivanov, the leader of the Union of Officers, replied. Thank you for welcoming me. The leader of the Officers Alliance, General Georgiev, was much more carefree. Since we are here, let's talk about why we agreed to form a cabinet with you. You must know that Romania is not easy to get along with. They have taken our territory no less than Serbia and Greece. Don't be fooled by the company-like name of the Link Group. This is a political party with a large number of officers, and they in the Officers Alliance represent the military's political attitude. In Bulgaria, it is very similar in terms of politics, and its military has a very deep political influence. So don't look at Bulgaria's army of less than 30,000, and you can't play politics here without dealing with military forces. So Khrushchev was not angry with General Osivanov's words, but said with a smile, General Georgiev, you can't stand here and talk. It doesn't matter that you two are soldiers. I can't stand it. Then go in and talk. Obviously General Ivanov's attitude is much better, but the two very different attitudes may also be singing double reeds. Then the group walked into the villa and came to a room specially used for negotiation. After the servant brought the coffee, the others all left, leaving only the three of them to discuss behind closed doors. And at this time KRSTFF spoke up. I believe that the two generals should have a good understanding of the current situation in Bulgaria. The two generals nodded when they saw Khrushchev's start. After getting a response, Khrushchev continued. But have you noticed the current predicament in Bulgaria? He didn't wait for the two to answer before he muttered to himself. The current predicament in Bulgaria is divided into two aspects, economic and political, and these two complement each other. The political predicament comes from the fact that after the defeat in the World War, Bulgaria almost lost most of the territory it regained after independence. This makes the domestic people very dissatisfied, and the turmoil caused by it continues to this day. The two generals did not deny Khrushchev's words, because as long as anyone who has studied politics can see it, how could the two of them not? Khrushchev was also very pleased with the response of the two, so he continued. In terms of economy, the country's economic development has fallen into depression due to the reparations from the defeat. In addition, the unfriendly attitude of the surrounding countries is also a drag on the economic development. In addition, the impact of the world economic crisis has caused the Bulgarian economy to collapse. Khrushchev's last sentence was a slap in the face of Bulgaria. Because the internal revolutionary organizations of the Republic of Bulgaria and Macedonia kept doing things in Greece and Yugoslavia, it caused dissatisfaction between the two countries. Greek troops invaded southern Bulgaria in 1925 in order for this lawless terrorist group to continue harassing Greece across the border. Even Greece and Yugoslavia have made a joint war plan against Bulgaria. If it weren't for the opposition of Italy and Britain, Bulgaria would have been beaten up long ago. In the face of Khrushchev's words that Bulgaria is facing difficulties, General Ivanov, the leader of the Union of Officers, said, "We all know what you said. Is there anything you can do about it? That's why the two of them came to meet with Khrushchev. We all know the problem, but where is the solution? So many politicians who have been in the Prime Minister's office in the past have been troubled by this problem. While let the two believe that UKRSTFF can solve it." Facing General Ivanov's question, Khrushchev said with a smile, "Since the two are invited to come this time, there is naturally a way to solve this problem. First of all, we need a stable political environment. The previous political chaos is completely unhelpful to solve any problems. At this point, as long as the three parties can cooperate, we can do it. This is also the reason why Khrushchev is looking for them. As long as the military does not make trouble, then Khrushchev has the confidence to resolve political differences at the political level. After all, the Social Democrats have won 54 votes, more than half of the parliamentary seats. As long as you win 1 or 2 seats from a small party, you can get enough support. As long as the military doesn't play tricks. The second is that we need firm allies. Our traditional ally was Russia before, but after Russia's discoloration, our country has never had enough allies to support. This is why our country is so isolated and helpless when facing Serbia and Greece. In fact, Bulgaria has another traditional ally, Germany, but the current Germany is not worth relying on. And the firm ally in Kirstef's words is more looking for the big brother, but the words are different point. So you chose Romania, but don't forget that Romania is also a country that invaded our territory. General Georgiev, the leader of the Sudden Link group, opened his mouth in the face of General Georgiev's questioning voice. Khrushchev did not refute. Do you have a better choice? Chapter 598, The Wind Rises in Bulgaria, Part 2. What did you say? Change the king. Both generals were stunned by Khrushchev's words. This is not because they are royalists. In fact, they are deeply dissatisfied with the current Boris III. But who made Khrushchev propose that the king of Romania be the king of Bulgaria, which surprised the two generals. In the face of the two generals who were surprised, Khrushchev said, in fact, it's nothing. Didn't the Austro-Hungarian Empire consist of the Kingdom of Austria and the Kingdom of Hungary before? As long as we ensure that the Kingdom of Bulgaria is respected and the rights exercised are not violated, why can't the King of Romania be our monarch? But have you thought about whether such a result can be accepted by the domestic people? Even if the people accept it, there will be a dispute between the two countries at that time, whether the wise King Edel is partial to Romania or Bulgaria. General Ivanov directly expressed his doubts, and General Georgiev was even more direct. This is a complete annexation of Bulgaria to Romania, which is a betrayal of the country. Faced with the reaction of the two generals, Khrushchev had already expected it. To be honest, at the beginning of this crazy plan, Khrushchev himself thought it was unrealistic, but after seeing the current situation in Bulgaria, the idea became more and more firmly occupied in his mind, so that he couldn't help but search for the divide the fragmented Austro-Hungarian material, to get the conclusions you want from it. Within the Social Democratic Party, no more than a handful knew that he had this idea. At that time, these people were also opposed to the idea of Khrushchev. And after his patient analysis and explanation, these people also changed their minds. And now Khrushchev intends to use the same method to wash the asterisk of the two generals, so that they can understand the intention. Two generals, I have a question here to ask. How long will it take us to restore Bulgaria to the state of Great Bulgaria? There is a premise here. In the case of a firm ally of Romania. Great Bulgaria, a word that made the two generals excited, has always been a plot that Bulgarians are reluctant to part with. It's just that both of them know that there is no possibility of Bulgaria in the absence of major changes in the situation in Europe. Even if it is willing to be a younger brother in an alliance with Romania, Romania has its own interests, and it is impossible to fight for it. Faced with this question, the two remained silent. And Khrushchev took advantage of the situation to pursue. If we replace the king with His Majesty Eda, then at least we have enough advantages. I have fully understood the Austro-Hungarian Empire before, and I have also understood its dual system. This system is actually for the weaker side. The Hungarians get too many benefits, at least when making decisions about the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Austria must respect the attitude of Hungary. In fact, this is also where I think there is an opportunity. It can use the power of Romania to help us regain our homeland, because we simply can't do it on our own. Khrushchev's words finally made the two generals loose, and only General Ivanov said, then why do we let the Kingdom of Romania use its power to help us regain our homeland by location? Khrushchev said, pointing to the map of the Balkans behind him. I have studied Romania and know that it is currently building ships on a large scale to expand their navy. Although Romania claims to be targeting the Soviet Union, I don't believe they are not interested in the Mediterranean. And as long as we have a common monarch with them, it is our greatest advantage to be able to lead it to a peep into the Mediterranean. And as long as we merge with Romania, its influence will be greatly enhanced in the Balkans. With these two advantages in hand, it is impossible for them not to be moved. Then we take this as a condition, and we can talk to Romania about an outcome that is beneficial to us. Even we Bulgarians occupy the majority of the South Dobroga area, maybe we can also talk to Romania. After Khrushchev had finished speaking, the two generals made eye contact. I saw General Georgiev said, I have reservations about this idea of your excellency. Although I also think that it is indeed difficult to recover the lost territory with the strength of Bulgaria alone. But the kingdom of Bulgaria should and must be retained, but no king can let Bulgaria lose its own motherland. Confronted by Georgiev's words, Khrushchev also replied, General Georgiev, I have seen your patriotic enthusiasm, but please believe that I love this country as deeply. Whether my idea can be realized not only requires our acceptance, but also the willingness of Romania. And Khrushchev's words gave the two generals a hint of information. That is, the idea was come up by Khrushchev himself, not the Romanian idea behind it. This information is very important, at least it shows that Romania has no intention of annexation to Bulgaria. So Ivanov said, the idea of your excellency is very unexpected, and we were a little caught off guard. However, under your explanation, I think this matter is too important and needs to be discussed. Under the leadership of Ivanov, Georgiev also said, Your Excellency, these two plans can be seen as the result of careful selection. I don't know how to choose this, so let's discuss it seriously next time we talk. The speeches of the two generals intending to leave did not make Khrushchev say anything. I saw that he also said politely, then let's talk about this next time. Khrushchev then personally put the two of them in the car, and after they both left, the propaganda minister Rilchev stepped forward and asked, what was the outcome of the talks? I can't say how good it is, but it's not bad. At least I can confirm that General Georgiev of the Link Group has no intention of opposing the establishment of a new king. Hearing Khrushchev's words, Rilchev was startled. Why did you tell them about it? Seeing the excited expression of the propaganda minister, Khrushchev said calmly, sooner or later they need to know about this. It's better to inform them in advance and give them a shot. By the way, how is your publicity in the army doing? Faced with inquiries from the party chairman, Rilchev told the truth. I have sent people to publicize the places they love to go around the barracks, and the effect is not bad. At present, many soldiers have shouted our words, and they would rather be part of other countries, as long as they can help restore Bulgaria's former glory. There is still a need to continue to increase publicity for the military. I estimate that the content of today's conversation will be leaked soon, and we will be busy by then. That's right, Khrushchev said it on purpose, with a crazy plan inside him. Didn't tell anyone that now the plan can start. Chapter 599 The Coming of the Storm. Khrushchev was right, and word about his desire to change the king was spread the next day. Many people expressed strong opposition to Khrushchev's remarks that he wanted to remove Boris III and support Romanian King Edel I. For example, Bolidov, the chairman of the People's Party, made a public statement condemning Khrushchev's remarks about supporting the Romanian King Edel I. He called Khrushchev's idea unrealistic, an act of open treason, and the Social Democrats should be disbanded. In the face of the surging opposition, Khrushchev not only did not restrain his remarks, but spoke openly at the Social Democratic Party's conference. For Bulgaria, changing the king is the only chance for Bulgaria to rise. This further confirmed his remarks. Criticism was further intensified in the face of Khrushchev's complete disregard for criticism and condemnation from other parties. In the party, many people were disappointed by the remarks and chose to quit. However, these withdrawals did not affect Khrushchev in the slightest, but they also reduced the Social Democrats' majority in parliament to about 40%. However, it is very interesting that the Officers Alliance and the Link Alliance, which are military political groups, have not made any statement in this regard. Moreover, no one in the caretaker government has made any comments on its remarks. This makes the political situation in Bulgaria confusing, but many people do not understand it at all. The political chaos in Bulgaria also involves the attention of Europe. The reason is very simple, because this Bulgarian turmoil involves its neighbor Romania. Not only Greece, Yugoslavia, and Turkey, which are next to Bulgaria, but also major European countries are paying close attention to it. In terms of the direction of the general public opinion in Europe, they are basically not optimistic about it. And there are newspapers who are concerned that it will increase tensions in the Balkans, potentially turning the region into a new powder keg. Compared with the worries of European countries, there is an uproar in Romania. Many people are happy to build this, because if His Majesty Edel becomes the King of Bulgaria, then Romania's rule will be expanded, and it is also a welcome thing for Romania to expand its territory. However, some people expressed concern about this. They believed that after His Majesty Edel became the King of Bulgaria, he would disperse his energy to Bulgaria, which would not be good for Romania. Moreover, Romania will need to support part of Bulgaria at that time, which will drag down the development of Romania. The remarks of these people are not at all unwilling to do what Bulgaria does, but they are all determined that Bulgaria will elect His Majesty Edel as the king. As for the person who is the focus, Edel's own feeling is that it's too late. That's right, Edel is such a bad feeling, like being on a dog. Because of his remarks about Kirst making himself king of Bulgaria, little did he know, it was a decision made entirely by Kirst himself. Although Romania has provided financial assistance to the Social Democratic Party, the party chairman was not expected to do so. Originally in Edel's plan, he planned to find an opportunity to annex Bulgaria during the period from Italy's invasion of Ethiopia to the German-Austrian merger. This can relieve Romania from external pressure, and at least Italy or Germany will distract Britain, France, and the Soviet Union. And what is it now? Count Romania to Italy and Germany, to test the attitude of Britain and France, become the first bird. So he was a little annoyed at the daring Mr. Kirst. The party chairman was completely using himself and the Social Democrats to force Romania to follow up. This kind of behavior that was completely led by the other side made Edel very uncomfortable. But they had to follow up because Edel did have ambitions to annex Bulgaria. So Edel had to find the current intelligence chief, Hal Monkman, to listen to his investigation of Bulgaria. As the head of Romania's intelligence services, Hal Monkman's work ability is very good, and he has repeatedly expanded Romania's intelligence network. After Milik retired, he took over from the Romanian intelligence king. Speaking of Milik's retirement, it can be described as a top priority for Romanian intelligence services in the past few decades. As Milik, who was trusted by the two kings, it was also thanks to him that he was able to spend his old age in peace. Speaking of which, the most difficult person to step down is the person in charge of the intelligence department. He knows too many things, and it is easy to become the object of jealousy of the superior. Looking at how many people who have done intelligence work in history have a good end, I know that it is the most worrying thing to doing this line of work, and many people work in it until they die. So Milik can enjoy his old age, in addition to his own handling, and Edel does not care about it. If it were replaced by a loving father, Milik's grave grass would be old. Your Majesty, at present, nearly 1/3 of Bulgarians oppose His Majesty's succession as the Bulgarian king, and nearly 40% of them are happy to see it, and agree with it. Many of the people come to Romania to work, do business, study, etc., and there are those who have close economic ties with our country. Those who opposed it were mainly scholars and cultural circles and the radical nationalists influenced by them. These people were more strongly opposed to His Majesty's succession to the throne. As for those who have not expressed their neutral attitude, they are mainly moderate ethnic element, and there are patriots who are more aware of the actual situation. They are not only dissatisfied with the current situation in Bulgaria, but also have envy of our country, and many people are very concerned about it. So it is the attitude of these people who do not express their opinions. After listening to Hal Monkman's narration, Edel had already made up his mind. It seems that the increased economic ties to Bulgaria over the years have changed many people's attitudes. But in the end, as Bulgarian, there are still so many people who oppose their succession. It seems that it is a little difficult to rely on Bulgaria to promote it, and it needs to be promoted by itself. And Romania. It's true that Edel must now follow Kirst's rhythm, but he has his own ideas and will not follow the opponent's ideas completely. So where is his breaking point? He already has some clues, but he plans to discuss with the government and the military. To this end, Edel called a bodyguard. Let the Prime Minister, His Excellency Mihalika, come with Admiral Felite. I have something to discuss with them. Chapter 600 Marches to Sofia. 1. After the arrival of the two military and political leaders, Edel presented his initial thoughts. What do you think of me going to Sofia? Can you increase the direction of public opinion in Bulgaria? In the face of Edel's question, the two military and political leaders couldn't help but want to stop. Because the current situation in Bulgaria is too chaotic. If Edel has any accident in Bulgaria, it will be very bad for Romania. Because the power of Romania is currently in the hands of Edel, if this power suddenly falls, although it will make them happy, but it's not a good thing for Romania, it will cause chaos in Romania. Rights will inspire people. Does anyone else have the prestige that Edel does to bring everyone together? So Prime Minister Maherike spoke up to dissuade him. Your Majesty, you need to think twice about this matter. Yes, Your Majesty, this matter does not necessarily require you to go. It is entirely possible for the Social Democratic Party to initiate an invitation and let our army open the way first, so as to ensure the safety of Your Majesty. Admiral Fleet's words were more direct, but Edel waved to the two military and political leaders. This is my approach after careful consideration. If you want Bulgaria to integrate faster, it's better for me to play point. Seeing Edel's firm attitude, the two looked at each other, and Admiral Fleet said with a firm attitude, Your Majesty, our military has no objection to your going to Bulgaria. But in order to ensure your safety, we must ensure your safety. This is our military's last request. And Prime Minister Maherike on the side also agreed. Admiral Fleet is right. Your Majesty's safety is very important. You must bring the army to ensure your safety. Facing the words of the two military and political leaders, Edel couldn't help but say, if I go to Bulgaria with the army, it will intensify the conflict, and it will be a detrimental factor for us to merge Bulgaria. Hearing the meaning of Edel's words made the two of them anxious. But Your Majesty, if, seeing the Prime Minister and Chief of General Staff who were quite concerned about his safety, Edel waved his hand and said, for my own safety, of course, I attach great importance to it. However, it is indeed inappropriate to bring troops to Bulgaria. If it is a Bulgarian national, it is much better. In the face of Edel's almost explicit words, the two would not understand. I saw the Prime Minister speak first. I'll prepare the public opinion community for this, and Admiral Fleet said the same. I will separate the Bulgarians in the army and prepare them for retirement. After arranging the response of both the military and the government, Edel, who had not made a statement before, stood up and made a public statement. He respects the choice of the Bulgarian people, but he is disturbed by the current chaos in Bulgaria. In order to persuade the two parties to avoid the worst development of the tense, he was willing to go to Sofia in person, so that Bulgaria could return to peace. Edel's remarks immediately attracted praise from Romania. The media praised the king's good deeds one after another, and many people have high expectations for the king's next move. And the Bulgarians in Romania even suggested that they would protect the benevolent and kind monarch to Bulgaria. For this reason, a military organization Edel was organized to defend Edel, and their slogan was to protect the safe arrival of His Majesty the King in Sofia. Immediately after the establishment of the Edel Guard, a large number of Bulgarians applied to join the organization. In just 3 days, the two organizations received more than 30,000 applications, more than the Bulgarian army. At the same time, nearly 10,000 Bulgarian officers and soldiers retired from the army, and when they turned around, they joined the guard. However, unlike Romania, the general public opinion in Europe is that this is a signal that Romania is going to take action against Bulgaria. For this reason, British Prime Minister Ramsay MacDonald and French Albert Lebrun both spoke publicly and discouraged Romanian King Edel from going to Bulgaria to avoid further deterioration of the situation. As for the Soviet Union, the Red Star newspaper published an article titled, "Please Stop Invasion of Bulgaria," and also published a speech by General Secretary Comrade Steele on the front page. The Soviet father used the idea that, if Romania continued to invade Bulgaria, the Soviets would not sit idly by, and the Great Soviet Union would surely punish the daring Romania. Let it know that European peace cannot be violated by Romanian clowns, for which Romania will also pay the price. And the attitude of the Soviet Union made many Romanian people feel worried. Opposite the fast-growing Red Empire, many people expressed concern. And in response to the Soviet statement, the army, under the order of the Chief of the General Staff, Fleet, has been alerted to prevent possible provocations by the Soviet Union. However, Edel is not worried at all about possible provocations by the Soviet Union. Which Kremlin master? The most important thing at the moment is his second 5-year plan. Due to Romania's interference before, the progress of the plan has been somewhat dragged down, and the current statement is at most expressing dissatisfaction and expressing goodwill to the Bulgarians, unlike the Soviet Union. However, Britain and France were much more eager. Its ambassador frequently asked the government to meet Edel, which was very disturbing. Finally, considering that the British and French attitudes could not be ignored too much, Edel met them at the palace point. After meeting Edel, the anxious French ambassador Denauge immediately spoke with concern. Your Majesty, what your country does will break the peace in Europe. Why do you say that, Your Excellency? I'm also thinking a peace in Bulgaria. Facing the French ambassador, Edel pretended to be confused. Your Majesty, we all understand your painstaking efforts, but how much does your Majesty know about the current situation in Bulgaria? In the face of the Romanian king, who pretended to be confused, Ambassador Denauge was bound to do his best. Because of the telegrams sent by the government, he tried his best to dissuade the Romanian king from going to Bulgaria, but on the way he exchanged views with the British ambassador Smith. Unless they use military means, it is impossible for them to persuade the monarch. Having been the ambassador to Romania for many years, he has a deep understanding of Romania. This Edel is completely in power, and no one can restrict his rights. The decision of the Sideri directly determines the direction of the Romanian government. How to dissuade him now? He does not have enough power to dissuade the king. Edel, who did not know that Ambassador Denauge's mind changed quickly, said with great interest, I have some understanding, but I don't know what advice Ambassador Denauge has. I don't dare to give advice, but I just want to analyze the situation in Bulgaria to your Majesty. Ambassador Denauge, who was ready to do his best to obey the destiny, continued. If your Majesty goes to Bulgaria, there is a danger of a civil war in the country, which is contrary to His Majesty's original intention. Moreover, the turbulent Bulgaria will also threaten the situation in the Balkans, which will give the red element an opportunity to take advantage, which will further increase the unrest in the region. Also has great damage to Romania's interests in the region. I hope that His Majesty should carefully consider the matter of going to Bulgaria, which is definitely an act that endangers the stability of the region. Regarding the French ambassador's words, Edel shook his head and said, His Excellency, the ambassador is too pessimistic. At present, the Bulgarian people are not as bad as you think. And I went with the attitude of making the country peaceful, so it is impossible for the country to break out into a civil war. Hearing that Edel still planned to go to Bulgaria, the British ambassador Smith couldn't help asking, as far as I know, the Bulgarians who lived in your country were formed by Bulgarians. Many of the guards who defended His Majesty were soldiers, and these people had served in the military of your country. I wonder if your Majesty can tell us about this. Why? Facing the questioning tone of the British ambassador, Edel was still not angry, and he categorically denied it. No way. If there is, it must be a Bulgarian ex-serviceman. And he asked back, I don't know where Ambassador Smith heard this kind of remarks. I hope His Excellency the ambassador would better confirm it before speaking. The final result of this meeting was unhappy. In the face of Edel, who was determined to go to Bulgaria, the two ambassadors had absolutely nothing to do. After returning to the embassy, they all sent reports to their governments to inform them of the results. Among them, Ambassador Denauge expressed his judgment at the end of the telegram. The monarch's determination to go to Sofia will partly change unless the government resorts to military means and sends troops through Greece or Yugoslavia into Bulgaria. The British ambassador, Smith, came to the same conclusion. However, will Britain and France have military frictions between Bulgaria and Romania? This question does not need to be thought about. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.